Ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs, in an exceptionally unique beginning to tonight's show, we shall begin with me.
Okay, go for it. Pull it up.
With the hook, you got to push down so the barb doesn't catch the fin coming back.
No,
Just twist it maybe as it comes through. Can we just try to support the throat area?
Just pull it, it'll go. I'm pulling pretty hard, man.
Yeah, it's got,
Parents are big birds, and they can puncture or heart with their beak. Oh.
There you go. There you go.
There you go.
Oh, nice work.
Oh, Lord, is this going to be good? Can I get the big release?
Yeah.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
And he's off.
There you go.
Hallelujah. All right, well, that's it. That's a
Nice work, guys.
That's a long short. How long do they get to run shorts for on CommieTube? Good evening, everybody. I guess it's better than starting with something that would only annoy you, which we have plenty of. Why is my camera so low? I'll fix that in a second. How goes the battle? Sunday night, Viva and Barnes, Law for the People. Let me make sure I'm on the right mic and I'm on the right camera. Everything looks good here. We are live in Rumble. We are live in Viva Barnes Law.locals.com. And we are live on CommieTube, which is behaving the way you'd think CommieTubes should commie, by being CommieTube. Okay, we're live everywhere. We're good. What I wanted to say was this. I got to put it on pause here. I was going to start the show with something that would make you very irritated, but I think we'll get to it anyhow, because we still need to talk about Tommy Robinson, who's had his trial, talking about George Soros, and yet you're still going to have people not understanding where Tommy lies on the political ideological spectrum. Listen to this.
They need to finish George Soros. That man and his ideas and his foundations are responsible for the destruction of the West. And someone has to now, he has to pay for it.
Why has George Soros done so much to try to dismantle?
For his worldview, for the globalist plan, they want to destroy the West. They don't want America to be a superpower. They want to bring America down. They want China to be the superpower. And America nearly were losing all of these battles until you elected Trump.
With Antifa and with these domestic terrorist groups in the United States now, we always hear the word George Soros.
Yes,
what involvement does he really have in what's going on? And
he pulls the strings in all of it. And even if he dies, he's sorted out so that his corporations and his movement and all of the policies and all of the where he wants his agendas will continue.
Yeah, with his son. We don't need to play the whole thing. I'll give you all the clip. Open society, funding of Antifa, funding of these radical No King's Day rallies. Did you guys see the coverage of it? It's almost comedic. And it's annoying to be on Twitter when that is all you see in your algorithm. Today, all I saw in my algorithm were a bunch of whiny snowflake libtards complaining about the meme of Donald John Trump flying a fighter jet, dumping raw sewage on Harry Sisson's ugly face. That's all that I saw in my feed today. And then yesterday, all I saw in my feed, No King's Rally. Look how many people are here. Hundreds of thousands, yada, yada, yada. Those things don't happen organically. They happen through funding, and funding that comes from billionaire George Soros, who literally sees himself like a god, funding these events. And it's not organic. And now that Trump, the best president in my lifetime, despite some foibles that we'll continue to constructively criticize, now that he's designated them international and domestic terrorist groups, well, that unleashes a great much potential of the law in terms of how you can go after these terrorist organizations. RICO, people, not just RICO law, RICO, and more. We're going to talk about it tonight. They used a photo. So, okay, be careful. They used a photo from the 2017 rally and claimed it was yesterday. I still haven't been able to definitively figure that out, because I did notice people were saying that. I did notice that the trees looked awful green for October. What the heck? But then I also wasn't sufficiently confident to make that statement publicly, and I heard conflicting reports on it. But it doesn't matter. They can have lots of people turn out because they're a bunch of effing lunatics. It's an asylum. I was looking at George Conway's feed. George Conway? Yeah, George Conway. Kellyanne Conway's ex-husband, the father of that daughter. You are watching a mental institution that has been unleashed on the public, or at least that has gathered in the public. I want to double check the 2017 photo before I say it, because I don't want to, positively assert something that's irrelevant in any case. You make a mistake on something that's absolutely immaterial, they'll still use it to go after your credibility, even though it's absolutely immaterial. But before we get into tonight's show, we do have to thank both of our sponsors, and they are kick-ass sponsors. One is Crypto.com. Now, I should make sure we're clear. This is not financial advice, people. First of all, Crypto.com is an exchange. It's the bestest exchange out there. You invest in crypto, you're investing at your own risks and peril. But if you're going to invest in crypto, you might want to use Crypto.com because they're awesome. Can you hear this? I don't think you can hear this. Every once in a while, something happens. In a defining moment for crypto, Trump Media Group and crypto are joining forces. Now, if you don't know what's going on with that, I'm going to put the volume down here because I don't think anybody can hear the volume on that. Crypto.com has partnered up with Rumble, and it's absolutely amazing. Cryptocurrency is no longer emerging. It is here, by the way. The latest move cements that reality in a very big way. Trump Media just inked a $6.4 billion deal with Yorkville Acquisition and Crypto.com, the crypto platform trusted by millions of users worldwide. They're teaming up to scoop up $6.4 billion in CRO, the powerhouse token that fuels fast, low-fee DeFi, staking rewards, and real-world perks like cashback on your spends to establish America's first CRO treasury, Trump Media Group CRO strategy. When it's done, this new company will be the biggest publicly traded CRO holder out there. By the way, if you invest in the public stock market, also do it at your own risks and peril. If you want in on the action, go to Crypto.com today. We can make crypto great again. And I was having a discussion with someone today who was actually telling me, it's like, you got to think of crypto not in terms of how much crypto you have in dollar value, but just how much crypto you have, period. And because I'm going to be in the units of Satoshis, at least for a little while, I did not realize Satoshi is the smallest unit of crypto. I will measure the amount of crypto I have in Satoshis, but it is it's the realm of the future, and it's where you're going to have parallel economies that are actually going to allow people to protect themselves from tyrannical governments, which we're going to talk about tonight. It's a trading platform. It's a what do they call it? An exchange. And they've partnered up with Rumble, Trump, and you know it's here to stay. Now, the second sponsor for tonight's show, and by the way, it's crypto and gold. I mean, this is where you basically have to go now to make sure that you have what you need to be not uncancelable, because when they lock you up like Bankel up in France, when they try to jail you like or bankrupt you like Trump or Elon, you never have enough FU money when they can take your freedom away. But you want to hedge your bets. Central banks, hedge funds, even politicians, the very same ones who smile on camera while running up record high debt, they're all turning to the same thing right now, quietly moving out of the dollar and into gold and silver. Who's left holding the bag when the dollar keeps slipping? Everyday Americans. You leave $100 in your bank account, it's not worth $100 next year. It's worth less with the mere act of inflation. You buy $100 worth of gold, it's worth more. Traditionally speaking, not investment advice. People invest at your own risk and peril, but I'm old enough now to remember I had to look it up when gold was $400 an ounce. Families who work hard, who save responsibly, who do everything right, but still watch their paychecks shrink, their retirement accounts lose value, and their trust in the system gets tested again and again. The elites know better. They know hard assets, gold and silver, are the lifeboats when the dollar takes on water. That's why they're loading up, and that's why you should too. Head over to the folks at Gold Safe Exchange. They're a great sponsor of the show. I had an interview with the founder last week. You can get hard silver, hard gold. They want to deal with larger amounts than individual coins, but give them a call, see what they can do for you. Gold and silver have been the most time-tested and true, but I'm told that crypto is going to be the next one, which is digital, indestructible, and gold has just been time-tested and true for the last 5,000 years. Links are in the description. Thank you all very much. Sponsors, thank you all for being here. And now we can get on with tonight's show, brother. We can get on with tonight's show. Old Man Toby says, have you ever listened to the new episode of Daryl Krupa's podcast about Germany? Wondered your thoughts. I didn't listen to the new one. And I know Barnes is going to have some choice words when he comes in about that. Some guy with cancer says, did you hear the SCOTUS oral arguments of the Louisiana redistricting case? KBJ was stepping on race like Sideshow Bob on meth. I didn't hear that either. I was wondering if you knew Canadians who were able to use Kalshi, asking for a friend. I don't know, DTQC. I don't know if Kalshi is not available in Canada. I can tell you one thing. I'm going to needle Kalshi until they honor that damn bet that they have to honor. Barnes, we'll talk about it when he gets in here. But I was, look, as far as I'm concerned, it's the non-investment advice. I bought into James Comey being arrested, a marginal amount, because I don't like losing money. But it's a done deal, and I don't understand how they're not honoring the market. And I'll just pull up the wording because it seems that they've forgotten what their own wording was on the market that they have yet to honor. And here's the wording on the market for James Comey getting arrested. And remember, it says here, they put this clarification in. Kalshi put this clarification in to the contract. The contract states that if an individual, quote, surrenders at a public station or courthouse with their attorney, end quote, the payout criterion is satisfied. This is my highlighting it, but this is verbatim. This is from their website. To be clear, voluntarily surrendering to law enforcement pursuant to an indictment without an arrest warrant is sufficient to resolve a market to yes. Like, I don't want to start fights with Kalshi. I like them. They got a great thing there, but this is going to cause people to say, what the F? If I can't rely on them to respect their own clarifications to honor the contracts that have clearly, by their own terminology, resolved to yes, who's going to use it in the future? Once upon a time, I forget what it was with, where I discovered a term. Oh, yeah, it was the Canadian election. And as whether or not they were going to resolve it finally to a minority Canadian government. And I'm like, they haven't done it yet. And then I start hearing a term called rule suck, which is sucks to be you type thing, where we know what the rules are, but we're just going to declare this market to not be what reality is. So Kalshi, they have to fix that. I don't know how they don't, but all that to say, who put that in there? DTQC from our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community. I saw it. It makes no sense. Over on CommieTube, Doug Gardner says, Viva, did you cut out the part where you chest fed the heroin? Like the end of Grapes of Wrath. I'm ashamed to admit that I have never seen Grapes of Wrath, so I don't get the reference. But look, we'll talk about chest feeding tonight. Let me just get center here. So, oh yeah, right under Trump. Robert, whenever you are ready to come in, we can get the show started. And if we've got a few more seconds, I'm just going to bring this one up. First of all, I put out a vlog today, which I'll ask everyone to share the link on CommieTube because those SOBs really have an interesting way of suppressing growth so that you don't reach new markets to drive them over to Rumble. But I saw a viral tweet, which was the courts in British Columbia basically stating that there was a decision that came down from the Supreme Court of British Columbia, which is actually the lowest level. It's like Supreme Court of British Columbia, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, that they are now recognizing indigenous rights of unceded land, unceded UNCEDED, as in it was never ceded to the crown by virtue of any treaty, and therefore Aboriginals still have rights over the unceded land. The only problem is now people have built up private property on unceded land. And the argument is now that as these courts recognize Aboriginal rights on unceded land, and now you understand the impact of these statements from government officials, we recognize that we are on the unceded land of the Mi'kmaq tribe of whatever. I'm not trying to make fun of anybody. I'm making fun of the idiots doing these virtue signaling things, now highlighting the legal consequences that can flow from it. The court in British Columbia came out and said, yes, we're recognizing, it's a specific case, Chihuahua. It has a CHWIP in the name of the tribe. In the greater area outside of Vancouver, recognizing the rights of indigenous tribes on unceded land, which might include private property. And the only problem with that is, let me pull up the tweet so that we can actually see it in all its glory, that there's people who have built houses on this. There's people who have bought the land from the crown on these properties. And then the question is going to be, what of those rights of those people now? And the reality is going to be, who the hell knows until this works its way through the court system. But a screenshot went viral, which was from the city of Richmond, saying, basically advising residents of this BC Supreme Court, so the lower level, Cowichan, there was no P in it, tribes. And it says, if you look at the draft map attached to the briefing, the ones that says this is unceded land, your property is located within the claim area outlined in green. For those whose property is in the area outlined in black, the court has declared Aboriginal title to your property, which may compromise your status and validity of your ownership. This was mandated without any prior notice of landowners. The entire area outlined in green, whatever. And so, bottom line, you have the city of Richmond, I think, deliberately trying to agitate the general population for the purposes of creating political pressure to overturn this decision at the Court of Appeal. But you have the city of Richmond saying, your private property has been recognized as having Aboriginal rights over it, and it might affect your title, your land ownership, how it affects your mortgage, how it affects the taxes you've been paying for the last however many years. We don't know. We'll find out when this works its way through the court system. And then you can sort of imagine why it is that the government would be ceding, pun intended, this level of uncertainty in the general population. When the government comes out and makes it a policy to recognize that you are on unceded land, what the hell precedent do you think that creates for Aboriginals who are then going to claim this is unceded land, it belongs to us? There were some funny memes out there, none of which I'm going to bring up because they could be arguably misconstrued as promoting non-peaceful methods of resolution of disputes. But this is madness. This is almost by design. Heading to the 2030, you will own nothing and be happy, because you've had a government that for the last 10, 15 plus years has made it a policy to pander to the Aboriginal rights of unceded lands, and how the white folk, the Europeans, although I guess it includes also the black folk, the immigrants in Canada, have no right to that unceded land. We should be thankful that they let us have it. And now you have the court saying, we'll judicially give it back to them. Figure it out with your government, with your landowners, with your banks. And then you're going to have the government, conveniently enough, coming to, well, we got to take it back over now federally so that we can renegotiate title rights, usage rights, et cetera, with the Aboriginals. And so great for the government, great for the Aboriginals, if you can say that. They've never had anything great happen to them in the Canadian government. And tough noogies for everybody who thought they had private property. You will own nothing and be happy. All right. I don't know if Robert hears me in the back, but Robert, pop on in if you want to now. There we go. You do hear me. Okay, awesome.
Voila.
Sir, how goes the battle?
Good.
I'm going to apologize in advance. My picks last night were equal. I mean, 50-50. Holy crap. The upset for De Ridder versus, I forget the other guy's name. Who could have seen that coming? I was 4 for 5 or 5 for 6 on the main card. But I think I couldn't have gotten it more wrong if I tried on the undercards. So I don't know if I was net positive for you yesterday, Robert. I hang my head in shame.
Did you play the Heron video?
Yeah, I played it coming in. It's nice. I love the way they produce these things. I didn't make the joke. I'm going to get a copy strike for having replayed my own content that's licensed out to other agencies. You should see another one coming soon. I did just a short video of the iguana infestation in Florida. They're like, it's so cool. It's like you're running through a valley in Jurassic Park. These iguanas, they're all like they run towards the trees where they hide, but they literally look like sperm going towards an egg, or dinosaurs going through the savannah plains back in 50 million years ago. Robert, what's the hat? What's up with that hat?
It's got a little red, white, and blue in it.
That's the Russian flag. Are you trying to get us all?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what do we have on the menu for tonight?
We've got the Trump-Putin upcoming summit in Budapest. We've got SCOTUS, red flag searches, racial redistricting, restitution, habeas corpus, Supreme Court jurisdiction, the exceptions clause, Alex Jones not getting any relief at SCOTUS, John Bolton indicted. That has some promise for a man who's a true criminal. The right to prayer using in public platforms. In this case, a school that wanted to do so is a case that's up at SCOTUS. New York City, dear Judge Kaplan, a long notorious corrupt hack of a judge, decided that New York City's sanctuary city status means that the government must write big checks, and he issued a patently illegal injunction. Kaplan has been doing this for decades and getting away with it.
Well, actually, we'll talk. We'll mention who Kaplan is when we touch that story. Sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Bowden against the Texas Medical Board. That case is likely to go to Texas courts and to federal courts for civil rights purposes. We'll describe what's going on there. Jury nullification in D.C. in another case, thanks to judicial nullification by watering down and rewriting the self-defense laws as it relates to federal law enforcement. The Seventh Circus decision about the National Guard, imitating some of the other lunatic decisions that have been coming out from federal judges who are busy gaslighting America as they join the insurrection itself. And the indictment of Antifa for domestic terror. We got the first one out of Texas. By the way, a case that mimics and imitates the facts being celebrated in the Oscar favorite movie, One Battle After Another, by the way. Pentagon media rule that's been misconstrued by a wide range of so-called First Amendment analysts about what exactly the Pentagon was requiring the media agree to. JFK Russia files disclosed, thanks to the good work of Congresswoman Luna, who got that directly from the Russians. Take a wild guess who they figured out was complicit in the assassination of President John Kennedy. In a couple of bonus cases, Ukraine caught violating the law. Washington loses their efforts to suppress religious rights. And there's an attempt of taking over an entire town and county in Texas being stopped by Attorney General Ken Paxton. So a packed docket tonight.
Well, let's start with the one that I get sucked into these stupid they're not rabbit holes. They're shadow boxing, chasing windmills on Twitter. The talking point yesterday, there were so many, as I'm at a baseball game with my kid, is that I didn't even understand it. One guy tweets out, "Give me 5 minutes in a room with Hegseth, that effing coward." I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? I go to his bio. He's got a Ukrainian flag in his bio, so I know he's an idiot. But then I understand.
By the way, he was, I believe, pardoned by Putin for various crimes he committed as a mercenary in Ukraine.
Oh, the guy that I was fighting with?
I believe it's the same guy.
Oh, shit. I didn't know that. Okay. Well, but then I read through the chat and then I find out he thinks this is a Russian flag. Now, I've highlighted this and I had fought with everybody. Yes. I just tried to clarify that Pete Hegseth has got an American flag handkerchief in his pocket and red, white, and blue. Now, today, I mean, it was endless. Angry staffer puts his pocket square is an American flag. His tie is a Russian one. I hope this helps, in response to JD Vance, who says it's just the red, white, and blue. And I said, yeah, because it makes total sense, you moron. I mean, why not the French flag? I mean, le tricolore. Why not the French flag? Robert, it's all, we're going to get into it with the Antifa thing, but it's almost like they are, I won't say paid, because they don't have to be paid. I don't even think they have to receive a specific talking point. It's an organic thing, like birds, those types of birds that follow each other as they all turn. And that's what we're witnessing in terms of misinformation and disinformation. And I get sucked into just screaming into the void, you effing idiots. That could be Russian, Croatian, French, British. And then someone was like, why would it be French or British? And I was like, because quite clearly Pete Hegseth wants to thank the Brits and the French for their ardent support of Ukraine. That's why he did it. That's how stupid it is to think it was Russian. Serenity now. Let's speaking of war whore people who deserve to go to jail. Robert, so John Bolton got indicted. It was a more elaborate indictment than what we got from James Comey. James Comey was James Comey's the 2-pager or the 2-paragrapher? And
yeah,
James
was the 2 pages.
Yeah, and then
James was much longer, and then this one obviously much longer as well.
This one was amazing because it goes into amazing detail, and the timeline is, I didn't realize or appreciate at first how damning the damn timeline was. That it's like Bolton started this idea of writing a book the day after he got appointed or he took his position, and writing a book and also plotting to humiliate the president. And so the indictment, we've covered it. I think you talked about it during a Bourbon with Barnes. I put out a vlog on it, but the bottom line, we have documentation. I don't know how they got it. I guess when they raided Bolton's house, of communications, text messages, WhatsApp chat, whatever, with individuals 1 and 2 who it's accepted it's his wife and daughter. Like there's not really any ambiguity about that.
Well, it's not in the indictment, but that's what's been reported in the press.
Okay. And so he's basically collaborating with his wife and daughter, individuals 1 and 2. And it's not me that said this, by the way. CBS News said it. I wouldn't have said it because they're not identified. And I just, don't know how anyone knows that, but they know that. And basically he's handwriting, transcribing minutes from meetings that he has under classification, classified meetings. His home office, which was approved as a SCIF, is revoked, so he can no longer retain any classified information after he is fired. He communicates clearly detailed information to individuals 1 and 2, wife and daughter, presumably. The day he gets out or fired, the day after, he's reaching out to I think it's Simon & Schuster publishers to publish this book in the room where it happened. The book, in fact, contains classified information, and a lot of it that the NSC overviews has cut it out and rework it, which he does. But it's evidence that he communicated classified info. And he had been on record saying that Julian Assange should get 170 years in prison, and Bradley Manning should be killed for treason for doing.
And the same with Ed Snowden.
So, Rob, I mean, again, it's
and the same with Donald Trump. Said the same thing about President Donald Trump. He also recently said, as the indictment details, that anybody that would share things on an unsecure communication, by the way, Signal is much more secure than AOL, should, he couldn't imagine somebody doing something so horrendous and illicit, and then they should be sacked and criminally prosecuted when the Signal leaks came out. So he's said this across the board in multiple contexts. There's no better person to condemn the actions of John Bolton than John Bolton.
So my question was, do they get to? They're going to get to bring in all these out of court statements, I guess, at some point during the trial. Do you think that they're going to strong arm Bolton into a plea deal by virtue of the fact that I think individuals 1 and 2 committed crimes, and if they are his wife and daughter, he's going to want to sing so that they don't go to jail?
That's a possibility, yes. For those that, 18 count indictment, 9 counts of retaining national security information, national defense information, and 9 counts of transmitting it over an unsecured channel. And that's what he did. He retained a bunch of information that was designated, not only classified, designated top secret. You're talking about war plans he was sharing, ongoing covert operations he was sharing, who the informants and intelligence apparatus
by name.
This is the most egregious public list of stolen national security secrets since, I don't know, Israel did it. But I mean, that's how extraordinary this is. Yeah, I mean, even the lefties and commies on MSNBC who are ready to say this is part of Trump's enemies list prosecution were like, after they read the indictment, they're like, this is really bad. This is really bad. He's completely guilty. So he has no legal defense, and his intent is all over his public statements over when he wanted Julian Assange in prison for life, when he wanted Ed Snowden executed, Bradley Manning executed, President Trump in prison for life, for things that don't compare to this at all, nowhere near as the egregious nature of what he did. And he put his own family at risk, his own wife at risk, his own daughter at risk. And then and they all know what they're doing because they're like, shh, we'll keep it, shh, let's keep it on the down low. It was a joke. And so this gives you a sense of how the deep state operates. This guy's been one of the most corrupt, rogue, destructive actors in the history of the United States and the world, responsible for more blood on his hands than any leader in the last, 70 years since Mao. I mean, that's how horrible and horrendous this human being was. If anybody belongs in prison for life, it is John Bolton. And again, all you have to do is listen to John Bolton. John Bolton said this exact kind of conduct at a much lesser scale required life in prison or the death penalty. So John Bolton has already condemned himself. Now, I get being generous and letting himself report, but this undermines the credibility of these investigations and indictments in terms of public opinion, who Democrats set the standard. They said if it's a high-profile political case, you got to perp walk. Once they set that stand, you got to do the search warrant raid, and you got to have the cameras ready to roll. And when that doesn't happen, the liberal Democratic judges assign these cases see that as a sign of weakness, not as a sign of generosity, a sign of weakness. So that's already happening in the Comey case. So is somebody going to tell me that it is random assignment that all 3 of these cases drew liberal Democratic appointees? James Comey magically gets a liberal Democratic judge. Then Tish James gets a liberal Democratic judge. Now Bolton gets a liberal Democratic judge. All of them in liberal Democratic jurisdictions. Not as bad as the District of Corruption, but still by no means guaranteed to get any kind of true justice. And we have a bunch of insurrectionary judges all across the country. I mean, as we speak, does anyone think they won't try to be insurrectionary as to these cases? Rediscover selective prosecution out of the blue? Rediscover vindictive prosecution out of the blue? Even though it's apparent Bolton was under investigation, Trump never asked for the investigation.
So he was under investigation in the Biden admin, and they decided to be friendly with him and let it slide.
Exactly. I mean, so the investigation started all the way back from his book, when the people clearing his book, who are career professionals, not Trump appointees, said this guy is disclosing a bunch of national security information, this lunatic. And that's what led to the lawsuit. And the court was like, what you're doing is high risk, by the way. Warned Bolton. And Bolton was still doing it anyway. and then bragging to everyone else about everybody else should go to prison for things that are 1/10 of what he did. So this is going to test, can our judicial system be impartial, or will they be as political and prejudicial and partisan as they've been today?
He got $2 million for that book.
Yeah. Does anyone really think 2 million people read that book?
No, I mean, I don't like how many copies would he have to sell in order to, let's say it's gross 2 million from the sales. They give him an advance, but for that book to be worth 2 million to Bolton, they're going to have.
It's like $1 to $2 a book. Most of the rest goes to the publisher and the publishing cost. Now, the digital era kind of slightly does change that math, but basically you would be looking at least 6 figures plus in book sales. He never got anywhere near that. My guess, he likely sold 5,000 copies, maybe 10,000 copies. So it was a payoff. It was a complete payoff. That's what these book deals are. They're open bribery. If we had a real Justice Department, and we didn't have some loser like Todd Blanche running interference for the deep state on a daily basis, then they would be looking at this as much as anything else, because it will rat out and smoke out all the corrupt rogue actors.
Let me ask, Robert, I'm trying to understand, because I do believe this is money laundering. What would Simon & Schuster's, unless they are assets or on the payroll of intelligence or deep state apparatus?
That's the short answer. The book deal, if you dig into a lot of these book publishers' histories and connections, it's all over the place. So then there's other scams they run, like they buy a bunch of the books themselves to try to boost the appearance of the book sales, stuff like that. Remember that what's her name? That Angela Merkel, that loser from Germany, because they're part of the whole coalition of losers that are walking around. Remember her book Freedom, and it was all over U.S. airports. It was like, who in U.S. airports wants to read about Angela Merkel in Germany? Nobody. So it's part of the money laundering scam. You get it, and here's how you know. Watch when populist or independent people retire from office or leave office. They don't get $10 million book deals. None of them. I mean, Trump didn't even get a $10 million book deal when he was out of office. It's Obama, it's Biden, it's Bolton, it's these corrupt Democrats. Almost every Supreme Court justice gets big fat book deals. Who wants to read the ramblings of Justice Amy Coney Barrett? Pretty much nobody.
Robert, I have to see my name, my last name on a book.
Your names. It's sued for copyright infringement, aside from being a horrible human being. And you can say how damaged the mere association of your name with her face is in the court of brand, damaging and diminishing your brand.
Okay, so that's amazing. So and it's in Maryland, so I don't know what the although people
a very liberal Democratic jury pool, not an impossible jury pool, but a difficult one.
Mm-hmm. And it's got to be unanimous. So you can have one activist juror who gets on, who does not apply the law or jury nullification. You could have.
And that would be his practical defense. He doesn't have a substantive defense. It will be, I was against Trump. Let me go. Even though he was deeply associated with Republican neocons, because a lot of them these days are themselves neocons. The key will be the judge facilitating. Like this recent D.C. case where this woman attacked an ICE officer and the jury let her walk entirely. Part of what helped was the judge giving a completely bogus jury instruction on self-defense. She watered it down and changed its language in ways that I've never seen that kind of instruction given in any self-defense case ever. Why? Because the judge wanted to make sure there was an acquittal. So you can do it also with what evidence you allow in, what evidence you don't allow in, what jurors you allow to provide certain information during the voir dire process. And then what instructions you give the juror. The combination of those three things, the judge can absolutely corrupt and steer a case. The movie we watched this Saturday, the vivabarneslot.locals.com board was The Verdict with Paul Newman. And people get to see in live time how corrupt and rogue judges constantly interfere in cases and try to rig the outcome. There were several people that were asking the live chat, they're like, this is all like dramatic, right? This kind of thing doesn't happen. It's like, no, it happens literally every day in America. It happens more often than not in most cases in most courts I'm in front of. There's nobody more corrupt in our government than those who wear black robes on the federal bench. And people are witnessing that in live time as they make up interpretations of the Insurrection Act and the president's power to declare a rebellion or to enforce the law, to create new rights out of the blue for illegals that never existed before in history, for taking over the federal government's personnel decision making and purse spending power. I mean, this is an insurrectionary body. What people are just discovering is the Democratic candidate for Virginia, for the Attorney General of Virginia, to be top cop in Virginia, who told other Republicans how he couldn't wait to see his political opponent murdered and his children murdered in front of his mother. That after that came out, guess what his approval rating did with Democratic voters in Virginia?
I presume it went up, but Robert,
Yes.
I'm also
It went up. It went up. This tells you how insane this is. Richard Barris is doing a massive survey on politicized violence, and he is finding that most professional class Democrats support politicized violence. They support ends to the means. There were people all through these No Kings protests wearing shirts of Tyler Robinson, the Charlie Kirk assassin, proudly. There was a school teacher in Chicago pointing to people going like this, being shot in the throat, and laughing about it. She's teaching your kids, folks. This is who it is. We have an entire insurrectionary class that is the Democratic professional managerial class. The mayor of New York, on the eve of the election, or the soon-to-be mayor of New York, on the eve of the New York City mayor's election, went and took a photo and then broadcast it and bragged about it to the world with an imam tied to the bombing of the World Trade Center. This is how insane this is. These people, and their core seats of power is the bureaucratic administrative deep state in the Pentagon and the State Department and the CIA. That's why President Trump has been getting false intel on Ukraine now for the last 3 months, is because the CIA Director Ratcliffe delegates and defers to MI6 on U.S. intelligence. Rubio delegates to the EU about what's happening in the Russian economy. The people at the Pentagon delegate to Ukraine what's happening on the battlefield. All they do in Ukraine is make stuff up. From the beginning of the war, I mean, some of the dumbest claims ever made, Ghost of Kiev and all that nonsense. It's systematic. And then it's in the judicial branch is the other place. They have a lot of they have the most power, and they're engaging in everyday insurrectionary behavior. And at some point, the president's going to have to decide whether to go along with it or not, because it poses imminent risk to the rest of us.
I had a number of questions in there. Jay Jones. This is Jay Jones. He's running for the AG of Virginia. He's the one who had those text messages. And when I was watching at least the highlights of the debate, I thought for a second that these text messages were revealed earlier, as in before October of this year. And I'm not sure that they were publicly, but I think the issue is that on the one hand, he never apologized even privately to the people who he sent these text messages to. And now that they've come out, Spanberger refuses to withdraw her endorsement of Jay Jones, says it's in the hands of the voters now, which presumably means if they elect this guy to be attorney general, they support what he said. I mean, I try not to be
We haven't seen this since the Klan. These are people running on Klan-Tifa tickets, and they're getting endorsed not by just a few wackos in their basement. They're being endorsed by people that have key power at the CIA, key power at the State Department. Where do you think they live? Virginia, overwhelmingly. Northern Virginia. It's these voters who are the most enthusiastic about the attorney general once they found out he was for murdering his political opponent's children. This is a referendum on where we are in this country. And it shows you the dangers of where it is. And that these are people who are in the key positions in the State Department, key positions in the Pentagon. That's where they live. That's who these people are. So these people are not nobodies. These are people with real power who want to see you murdered for your political beliefs and want to see your children murdered for your political beliefs. That's how insane this has become. And how dangerous it is. And the judges are busy pretending that gaslighting everybody about, there's no insurrection here. Well, what are you talking about? Insurrection. Assuming they have the power to override the president's determination on that in the first place. But that gives you an idea of how dangerous it is. The Virginia Attorney General's election will tell us whether everybody in that state has lost their mind or it's just the professional class Democrats. But I was shocked they didn't withdraw Jones's candidacy, but now I see why. They don't see a problem with what he did. They like what he did. They cheer what he did. And this is like people supporting the Klan 1920s, the last time we saw this at this level.
I was just, not that I fact check here. I want to see these things also in real time. It says favorability statistics. Among all surveyed groups, only about 12% of voters said their opinion of Jones became more positive. I'm sorry. When we talk about Islamic extremism, that 10% figure of 1.8 billion is exactly what people cite as the risk in terms of not condemning the other 90%, but in terms of highlighting the real risk. Only 12% of voters said that they were more favorable to James Jones now. That's only 1 in 8 people, give or to rounding up. Okay, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, it's insanity. It's the kind of insanity that would subsume the world if they got their druthers. These are people who would eagerly and happily have us go walk into a nuclear war with Russia because of their mindset, their Russophobic mindset. And to give you an idea, like, I'm increasingly of the conclusion AI is an artificial intelligence. It's artificial information. Go to almost any AI site and ask them. I was doing it this weekend on a range of topics, and they feed you worse propaganda than CNN. And it's like, in fact, when you ask them, well, look at this source, they often continue to deny that source says what it says. Mm-hmm. Anybody that's a lawyer knows they just make stuff up regularly. You cannot trust AI at all. I've had the people within the firm structure occasionally, oh, here's what the answer is. And I'm like, no, go look again. That's AI giving you fake intel again. They give fake information all the time. AI is going to, like right now they're doing studies. When companies use AI, they often have to go back and fix all their screw-ups. Like AI can't even do coding correctly. When AI does coding, it makes so many errors. In fact, here's what they found in the study. How much time did using AI save the company versus how much time did it cost? You might say, how did it cost time? Fixing AI's mistakes. It turned out fixing AI's mistakes cost them twice as much time as AI supposedly saved. I think Sam Altman is another Sam Bankman-Fried, pushing a massive fraud on the world to enrich himself. The company's worth $500 billion and makes no money, or whatever. It's like going to be worth trillions. I mean, I think it's a massive bubble that puts us all at political risk, driving up energy costs all over the place. And nobody lies more than AI does. And it's all predicated on them stealing other people's copyrighted materials that hasn't yet reached full adjudication, that could completely eviscerate the entire foundation of AI. It's just a computer algorithm. And it's no better than the intel or input that goes into it. And that intel input is clearly garbage. It's the kind of garbage that the Pentagon, the CIA, and the State Department like to feed the Trump administration about things like Ukraine. But that the peace summit in Budapest with Viktor Orban, the only reasonable, substantial leader other than Slovakian president in all of Europe, he has helped organize this. And thank God the president went back to his instincts in dealing with that coked up midget. There was a great little video going around of what Zelensky really said it. That Trump was couldn't stand Zelensky so much. He wouldn't even let him do the press conference on White House grounds.
Robert, actually, one question here. First of all, Trump was complimenting him on his suit this time around, which is the most it's deliberately condescending, but it's deservedly so. There was some big discussion as to who called who between Trump and Putin on the eve of the meeting with Zelensky. I just got to ask a stupid question.
Ongoing conversations through Victor.
Yeah, but what difference?
They just kept it under the hood. Because there's all these efforts of these corrupt deep state lunatics, this professional managerial class, this globalist class that gets rich off war, and like Lindsey Graham, Lady Lindsey, the queen of the war whores. A queen maybe in more ways than one, J. Edgar Hoover style, who invites us all into his brothels of blood on a daily basis, who is crying all week because there's no more war in Israel and maybe no war with Iran, and now he thinks maybe no war with Ukraine. I mean, he's going to be depressed. He's going to need a couple extra doses of Prozac each night. But the mindset of these people is to try to drag us into war by lying about the conflict. Lying about what Russia's military success is on the battleground, lying as to what Russia's military strategy is, lying about what Russia's up to, what Russia's economy is doing. And so I just put out some basic data, though you have to dig deep to find it, because the AI, what it exposes is how propagandized the Western mind is on Russophobic insanity. So like you dig in, and you find all this nonsense on the Russian economy. And I even asked AI, I was like, well, what does the World Bank say? And then begrudgingly had to say, well, even the World Bank says their economy is just fine. And I was like, it was like, why did you just lie to me for the last six inquiries? If you go to the Russian economy, guess which country and all, if you compare all of Europe, the United States, Canada, and Russia, which economy has produced the highest real wage growth, real disposable income growth for its working middle class since the war started. Overwhelmingly, Russia. On average, Russia's wages and incomes of working class people, which is the number one metric ordinary Russians care about economically. They don't care about stock markets. They don't care about the value of the ruble. They don't care when they get that new Louis Vuitton bag. They're happy that Netflix is no longer bombarding their kids with a bunch of garbage, like all the tranny stuff they're trying to feed kids, as further disclosures came out this week, has been deliberate and intentional to corrupt our young children's minds while we're not watching and not paying attention. It has gone up sixfold rate of increase compared to the rest of the West. And Russia's the economy that's falling apart. There is no oil problem. There are no gas shortages. All that is garbage. All that is hogwash. They're a country that can feed itself. They're a country that can fuel itself. And increasingly, they're redomesticating their industry, which is what Trump is trying to do here in the United States. And they're doing it to great success. They can build militarily in 1 year what it takes all the NATO countries combined 5 years to do, according to NATO's own sources. A British general came out this week and said, Ukraine has no chance. They don't have the manpower. They're going to lose. The only question is will they lose everything? So President Trump brought Zelensky and said, look, here's the lay of the land. You're going to lose everything. So why don't you take this very reasonable deal that's on the table that you don't lose everything? And Zelensky was like, as he usually is. And Trump finally figured out Zelensky doesn't want peace. He wants war. He needs war.
Well, I mean,
the moment there's peace, he's gone. And maybe they hang him in Kiev.
And it's arguably the same thought process that people had for the war in the Middle East, that Netanyahu needs to keep that war going in order to avoid his criminal trial, or at least the focus on that, in order to avoid the political turmoil. And everybody knows this is not unique to Israel or Ukraine. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Wartime presidents tend to get reelected and tend to stay in power, especially when they declare martial law and annul elections.
And lock up press, lock up, torture and imprison and murder dissident journalists, dissident politicians, dissident religious members. I mean, this guy is closing down the various churches. Most anti-Christian leader in the world is Zelensky in Ukraine. He just recently sacked the longstanding mayor of Odessa, on the grounds that he was secretly Russian. And then they produced an obviously fabricated passport. And then because the lunacy of this is on steroids, they said, the Russians created the fake passport. Well, with the Russians, they don't need to create a fake passport. They can print it right off the printer in the back. So this is how insane these people are. Putin understands the opportunity for peace and détente and rapprochement with Trump because he sees Trump as very unique in the West. Trump is smart. Trump is rational. Trump puts America's interests first. That's not true of any other European leader. They hate Starmer in the UK. They hate Macron in France. They hate Merz, the big E3 in Germany. They want nothing to do with these people. Even the Poles, who are over the top in their Russophobic rhetoric, know not to escalate this conflict either. Now, of course, this week, the Poles and the Italians were conspiring to keep two Ukrainians from being extradited to Germany for that fake case about what happened to Nord Stream. So the Nord Stream pipeline got blown up, hint, hint, by the Biden administration and the Brits.
If I may just pause you there, because during the meeting with Zelensky and Trump, Zelensky actually referenced Russia destroying Ukrainian or European infrastructure. And I was like, it's like you can't make... I don't want anything. I have nothing specifically for Russia and nothing specifically against Ukraine. So I'm like, I'm not supporting Russia by highlighting the audacity of the lie in front of the White House to come out and say, yeah, it was Russia, which we all know did not bomb the Nord Stream pipeline. The only question is, which of the allied forces did? Was it the U.S. alone, or was it U.S. with some deep sea diver Ukrainians?
Yeah, and maybe that's some patsy Ukrainians. Why? So somebody might wonder why the Germans even going through this show. Because big German insurance companies that insured the Nord Stream pipeline don't want to pay out to the people who got screwed by it. So they needed to not be accidental and be intentional. So that's why the Germans were like, how do we go through an investigation and set somebody up as patsies because we can't blame the real culprits because of who is involved? And so they came up with a couple of low-level Ukrainian patsies with one of the dumbest cover stories in the history of man. We're out in their little boat. We went down and did this diving, and somehow we got it attached. I mean, stuff that nobody takes seriously. Seymour Hersh's story is far more likely to be accurate. The U.S. and the Brits conspired to blow it up. These were the convenient patsies. They're in Poland. there in Italy. But in order for the Germans to satiate their insurance companies and help them get off the hook, they had to go through the motions of trying to extradite these guys. But now the Polish and Italian courts both came out and said, terrorism good. The leaders of Poland, terrorism good. Woohoo! Because they said it's okay to commit domestic terrorism if you think you're doing it in defense against another country. That's every terrorist definition in the history of man. Every terrorist says that. They're doing it.
Well, of course, Jay Jones would have said, killing his political adversaries is in the best interest of the country because it will change political views and bring people over to the side of the Democrat terrorist attorney general.
Well, I mean, it's just a laughable disgrace. And we're going to lecture the rest of the world on democracy, on the rule of law, on human rights. Even the European Court of Human Rights this week, as further background of this summit, they had to recommend, first you have to get through all the crap, because European courts are always crap, but they have to get through all the crap of the propagandized version of the facts concerning the conflict, which European leaders were shocked when they met with the Chinese, and the Chinese were like, everything you guys are saying about the Ukraine conflict is BS. They're like, how can you possibly say that? Because you're all a bunch of frauds and liars. Quit lying to everybody, you morons. Everybody who's been a part of this is going to be humiliated down the road. I might have gotten into a little trouble with a few folks because I put out a tweet that said you can find better information from an autist on Telegram than the president, the vice president can get from the Pentagon. And some people thought I was being sarcastic. That's the God's honest truth. That the crowdsourcing, what COVID should have taught everybody, is you cannot trust institutional sources. You go to Telegram, you get these 100 nerds that all they do is study this war obsessively. And you'll get accurate intel. And how do you know it's accurate? Because its predictability is off the charts. Short to medium term predictability is much better than anybody in the Pentagon. Definitely better than that Nimrod General Kellogg.
Let me read. Robert, may I read this in voice?
Go ahead.
It's increasingly apparent some autist on Telegram knows more of what's happening in the Ukraine war than our own president, vice president, and Pentagon.
And I don't blame the president or vice president for that. I blame the Pentagon and the State Department and the CIA for that.
But it's a known, demonstrable, proven fact that when they get it wrong every now and again, I'm saying 4chan and whatever, they get the shooters faster than the FBI, at least identify them. They get the social media accounts before the FBI can take them down. They located the "He Will Not Divide Us" flag by Shia LaBeouf planted in the mountains based on the overhead patterns of flight in conjunction with the overall lay of the land. They are autists, I suspect, literally, but certainly.
Oh, good number of them. I already followed their accounts.
And they are. It's true. So it's only good. The least
their accuracy is very, very good. And what's amazing, I was fascinated. AI completely suppresses all of that. I was curious, tell me what's happening in the Russia-Ukraine war, and all they gave me was Western propaganda that has been discredited even from some Western sources if you study them and follow them long enough. And I was like, well, what about according to Telegram? They're not aggregating that data or information. So they're not crowdsourcing it. I mean, you can go to AI and ask AI, okay, who do these 8 political leaders all follow? Is there so who are the social media accounts that all 8 of these people really seem to follow? They can't even calculate it. Not even Grok AI can calculate. Not even Super Grok AI can, not Grok 4, Grok 5, Beta, whatever, can't calculate. They have somehow built into the algorithms deliberately memory holing. They have made AI into an Orwellian tool.
There's zero question about it, and I believe it does it with whatever the opposite of crawlers are. Is that they're not crawling to find, they're crawling to suppress and hide.
Exactly.
There's zero question that it's happening because.
And my fear is that key people in the administration don't realize they're being systematically lied to, because anywhere they turn, they're getting this fake intel. And now I think Viktor Orban was a conduit to get accurate information to President Trump because Trump trusts Orban. So he might not trust the Russians, but when Orban's saying, trust me, their economy is just fine. Trust me, the Russians are winning this and will win this. Trust me, you are better off. We are better off. The world is better off if we force Ukraine to fold, not try to force Russia to fold, because that's never going to happen. The Russians would rather eat dirt, even if their economy was in the tank, even if they could make no headway in the battleground, they would rather eat dirt than surrender. So that's never going to happen.
And it's not for, I'm not a master of history by any means. It's just a known fact that Russia wins these wars of attrition, which with much larger, much more capable armies. Ukraine is not one of them. And I was reading through the replies on your tweet. Some people said, I thought you said Russia was going to win 2 years ago. I'm like, They've won. It's not Russia that is not bringing this war to an end. And I'm not sure what anyone thinks victory would look like other than
it's only Putin's self-restraint. That's what Trump made clear to Zelensky on Friday. He said, look, the only reason your whole country isn't wiped out is because Putin has chosen not to wipe you out. And the reality is Putin sees an opportunity with Trump to make the world a safer, better, and richer place for both the United States and Russia. Anybody that looks at this data economically, independently, will come to that same conclusion. That's why Russiagate started. Donald Trump said in 2015, wouldn't America be better off if we got along with Putin, if we got along with Russia? He was exactly right. From that moment, they launched Russiagate. That was when Russiagate began. And then what was the second impeachment? Or well, that was the first investigation. What was the first big impeachment? Ukraine Gate. All about the same thing. Because the globalists know that a U.S.-Russia rapprochement sinks the globalist empire, all of its war whoring, all of its concentration of economic and political power goes bye-bye. When two conservative Christian nations that can feed themselves, fuel themselves, and have the greatest nuclear arsenals in the world are aligned, the globalists are done for and finished. We can convert Paris into the tourist destination it was always meant to be.
Nobody's going to Paris anymore, Robert. I'll tell you that much. Maybe they are.
No,
they're not going to like it.
You got to practice Allah Akbar. That's going to be the new European phrase.
It was bad enough when it was just Frenchmen who were rude and snobby and overcharged and smoked in your face. But it's not the same city. It's not the same country anymore. But everybody knows that. Robert, let me do one thing before I lose it. Yes, sirree, Bob. We got St. Jonesy in the house. This was a bell made from bullets from Ginger Ninja. It's beautiful. Welcome to the community, St. Jonesy. So they're having the summit, Robert. What is it over? Is it over 2 days? What are the expectations? What do they hope to? What do we expect to see out of this?
Well, it's really the last opportunity for the U.S. to achieve this. And because the problem with all the bluster and bluffing about tomahawks and 500% sanctions and all that kind of stuff, even though I think Trump had other reasons for doing it, and I think he maybe thought the Russians knew it was a bluff so that it wouldn't cause problems, but it did. There's a large part of Russian public opinion that is turned against Trump, that thinks he's untrustworthy, that thinks he's unreliable, that thinks the Americans lie, that thinks the Americans can push everybody around, including Russia. Russia's a very proud nation. And so you had people that there's a person who's Russian born, but grew up in America, was actually served in the American military, then went back to Russia. That travels the globe. He has a YouTube channel and other things. He was on RT to give you an idea of how severe the mindset got. So this is a guy that's more for rapprochement, likes Trump, et cetera, by nature. He was like, if we hear Trump say one more word about tomahawks, we should just nuke the District of Columbia. That's the kind of language that was starting to come out. And I think Americans were not, I don't think Trump administration was processing that this over-the-top belligerence, this bellicose belligerent language, even if Trump didn't intend it to have this impact, was. And I think that's why the back channel between Trump and Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, helped create this. Because Orban was like, whoa, this is not working out the way you think. It's causing all kinds of destabilization. And right now, when we have a huge fight with China over rare earths, Russia has a whole bunch of rare earths. Russia has a whole bunch of fuel. Russia has Arctic development. As came up with the Russian Economic Sovereign Fund investor, who's real active and very funny, actually, on X. Because he was talking about the tie, the tie as well. He goes, the Russian Americans have the same colors because we got the same values. What are you crying about? Talking to all the Ukraine Nazis, the nut jobs. But we can build a tunnel. We can build a tunnel between. By the way, that was the Khrushchev-Kennedy idea. So Kennedy had to maintain back channels to Khrushchev through Robert Kennedy's talked about this through Bobby Kennedy, through the Russian ambassador visiting Bobby Kennedy's dad's home. Bobby Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Sr.'s home. Because Kennedy figured out the entire deep state apparatus around him that had built up would nuke the world if they could. They wanted to see what a nuclear conflict was. Khrushchev recognized that about the hardliners in Russia. What people don't know is there's still a bunch of hardliners in Russia that think they should take all of Ukraine, humiliate Ukraine, and teach everybody a lesson. That's where their mindset is. So I think this has been underappreciated in aspects of the Trump administration. But I think Orban working with Trump got him to recognize the reality of what was happening. He also figured out that Ukraine was lying and Europe is lying when they say they want peace. They don't want peace at all. I mean, ask yourself. Trump put him right on full display. He asked Zelensky. He goes, hey, well, what do you think about this idea of a bridge between Russia and Alaska? What does it have to do with Ukraine? There's nothing to do with Ukraine. Does Mr. I want peace, Zelensky, have a problem? He shouldn't have, right? He goes, oh, sounds good. Sounds like we're working for peace. He goes, I don't like it. I don't like it. Now where's my cocaine? That's Zelensky. So the guy's a fake and a phony and a fraud. And thank God Trump finally has put that all back together again. Despite the false advice and false intel and false information he's getting from his own State Department, his own CIA, his own Pentagon. They have not been able to purge the bad actors yet. General Flynn was complaining about that today, saying, when the heck are some of these bad actors going to be removed? I hope that the reason why it's in Budapest is because this is all being organized by Orban. Now the Germans and others are like, we demand you arrest Putin when he comes to Hungary on an ICC warrant. That's never going to happen. By the way, that would completely backfire on Europeans. If something like that ever happened, there would be no more talk and Russia would go full scale. And then you'd see what the bear looks like. And you don't want to see what the bear looks like. And so so this is all being organized by Orban. Orban's goal is to get Trump to act on his instincts, which is we would be better off if we got along with Russia. And no more money pit in Ukraine. As Trump also made the point of, this has been a military pit because of how many weapons we're short of right now for our own self-defense because of how much we've given to those idiot Ukrainians. So preserving our own military stockpiles, saving money out of our own budget when things are tight. We're in a shutdown as we speak. Restoring relations with a country that can be a huge boost for fuel cost, stabilizing energy cost, access to rare earths, other essential minerals and goods. Things like uranium, we still depend on Russia for that, as an example, makes eminent and absolute sense. And there would be no better if he could pull it off. It would be more consequential than Nixon going to China. Remember, all the hardliners didn't want Nixon to go to China. It was the most brilliant move to isolate and create a gap between Sino-Soviet relations in the history of the Cold War. Most Cold War observers would say Nixon going to China was one of the most brilliant political coups ever done. If Trump gets rapprochement with Russia, in my opinion, it will exceed what Nixon achieved in going to China. So let's hope that's what happens. Time will tell.
Robert, I'm going to bring up a bunch of chats right now so I don't fall too far behind. Plant Nerd for $100 over in Locals says, Barnes, I sent an email. When you have some time, I would covet your advice. Do not covet. It's a biblical sin, but that's a joke. We'll resend with my username and subject. I screenshotted it. I'll remember this for afterwards. What I was going to do is take that one down and just burn through on Rumble all the way to the bottom. Have either of you listened to the new episode of Daryl Cooper? Okay, I got that. Did you hear SCOTUS oral argument in the Louisiana redistricting?
Oh, yeah. We're going to get to that.
We're getting to that. 4 North American airport PA systems were hacked and broadcast Hamas propaganda. Shouldn't this be a bigger story? Yeah, I hadn't heard about that. Let me just go screenshot that. Bolton is the worst national security breach since Robert Hansen. I'm not old enough to remember who that is, the engaged few. Book deals are second only to modern art auctions in the number of bribes laundered. Absolutely. King of Biltong. Craving a snack that's bold like Viva and authentic like Barnes. Get some biltong packed with testosterone-boosting protein and many other good stuff. BiltongUSA.com, code Barnes for 10% off. Thank you, Biltong. It's delicious. Do it. You both should dedicate a Sunday stream to the danger of Islam and Sharia law taking over in North America and the West. It is a bigger problem than any of us can conceive, says Candy08. And Mark Peterson says, PM Mark Carney played 5 minutes of college hockey at Harvard. I asked AI where he played prior. AI said a team that did not exist yet, high school with no team, and he was 6'3". Wild and dangerous and scary. I'll get to the locals tips in a second. Robert, there was something else.
Yeah, we got a lot. SCOTUS.
Yeah, but hold on. There was something else about international stuff. France. Oh yeah, it was sort of off topic. You saw the mild victory that Rumble, Chris Pavlovsky got over in France, where a court declared that email directing Rumble to suppress and remove specific accounts or videos was unlawful. Am I wrong? Am I overly cynical in thinking that's it's a W for now, but what that basically was the court guiding the legislature as to how they have to do it lawfully?
I think it's because now that Rumble has a friend in the White House, that various foreign governments are reconsidering their hostility. I think that's a little bit.
It's good. It's good to have friends in powerful places.
Yeah, absolutely. But like on that front, like Ukraine sanctions, this is like a lot of European sanctions. Even the European Court of Human Rights, which is usually a joke, had this conclusion. They said, quote, none of the decisions at issue contained any individualized justifications. This was stealing a bunch of people's property and all the rest. This was by Ukraine. This is talking about Ukraine. They mechanically reproduced all the grounds for applying the various restrictions provided for in the relevant section of the Sanctions Act without even explaining how they applied it to this particular company. The courts of Ukraine had to exercise sufficient scrutiny in order to ensure that at least the listing wasn't arbitrary. But the court didn't even do that. There was no meaningful judicial assessment at all. They're like, somebody just says, you're sanctioned, we're stealing all your stuff. Well, why? Not going to tell you. How? Not going to tell you. Can we protest it somewhere? Nope, screw off. Even the European Court of Human Rights is like, this kind of looks bad. So if you're losing the Ukrainian Court of Human Rights at Ukraine, a woke neoliberal neocon court, then that tells you what a joke Ukraine government is when any kind of discipline analysis is applied.
Robert, let me read two over on CommentTube real quick. Like one said, you're so off base here. Russia is the aggressor. That's from Austin. And JS says,
because that person's been propagandized.
Yeah, no, I mean,
if you gave that person a test on just basic literacy on any aspect of Russia-Ukrainian relationships, they would fail every time.
Well, I mean, it's
basic stuff they wouldn't know.
In real time, if you placed nukes in Mexico or Canada, the U.S. would view that as aggression. Oh, but Canada's got
armed a Mexican army, sent your Russian military supervisor to supervise them, gave them all the weapons to do it, funded their entire government. You would probably think you were at war with Russia, wouldn't you? That's what we have done in Ukraine, stupidly and foolishly, to the profit of not anybody in America, but to the detriment of our military supplies, to the detriment of our budget, and for what? To be in an antagonized near new World War III relationship with Russia and pushing Russia into the loving arms of the big panda. And there's no reason for that. China is still our economic competitor, not Russia, and we should be aligned with Russia because Trump was right in 2015. Wouldn't we be better off if we got along with Putin?
Now, before we get into SCOTUS, let's read a few of the tipped questions over in our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community. Tipping here for my comment. Thanks, Howard the Duke. I'll go see if I missed a comment there. I was wondering if you knew Canadians who were able to use Kalshi. Okay, got that. Luckily, most Alberta is ceded land for when we declare independence, says Satoshi 8. F. Chatron, how about Canada declares we own everything the Indigenous? Get a job instead of freeloading based on history. Every penny we give them goes to some chief's pocket. This is no question. There's corruption in terms of the tribal system in Canada. Junkman611 says, is there any possibility that KJB is helping the constitutionalist of the Supreme Court by making such asinine arguments that there's no way that they could possibly agree with her argument? She looks so incredibly stupid in her oral arguments. Nobody other than liberals will agree with her. Okay, let's get to that. Now we're on the SCOTUS. And I'll come back to the other tip questions afterwards. Robert? I didn't get it. What happened with KBJ?
Oh, so KJB. This was the case that I think we've previewed 3 times. They had the oral argument this week on the racial redistricting question. In the context of that case, Justice Jackson tried to compare the Voting Rights Act to the Americans with Disabilities Act, and she even kept extending it. People are like, where is she going with this? She's not going to say black people are retarded, is she? Yes, she is. She would say, you understand, we're disabled. She even said this from the bench. We're disabled. Black people are disabled. And that's what led to the Babylon Bee headline. Justice Thomas to Justice Jackson. Black people are not disabled. Only you are. No, not black people in general. But here's the key. It was known that Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas have long been skeptical of these laws. That the second section of the Voting Rights Act, as interpreted and applied, is constituting a race-based discriminatory mechanism of governmental action for purposes of congressional representation in direct contravention to the constitutional amendment it's supposed to be enforcing, which is the 14th and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Which, by the 15th Amendment, was all about we don't discriminate based on race, by the way, in matters of redistricting and power and voting. And this law was turned on its head in the Orwellian world that we live in our federal courts. And so finally, the question was, where was Kavanaugh, Roberts, and Barrett going to be? Kavanaugh, Roberts, and Barrett all expressed skepticism about the law. And we're saying, at some point, doesn't this run out of bandwidth? And some of us had been saying the courts would ultimately go here because for the last 20 years, they've been hinting at this. They've been saying at some point, all the affirmative action stuff, which is what this effectively is, has got to end. Doing it for one generation, maybe 2 generations, not 3 generations. Enough is enough. It's causing more controversy, and it was always a legal fiction that was in violation of the Constitution. But here was the consequence that Andrew Branca figured out. If you strike down the second section of the Voting Rights Act, and based on some of Justice Roberts' questions sound like they would, guess what else you get rid of? The excuse to limit various voter registration mechanisms by ID. Texas strict voter ID law got knocked down because of the same section of the law. That section goes out the door. Not only does racial redistricting go out the door, that Democrats lose a 15 to 20 seat cushion it's given them for 40 years, but on top of that, all the different laws meant to allow illegals and others not qualified to vote also go out the door, because now strict identity requirements, strict requirements to make sure you're actually a qualified U.S. citizen, qualified to vote under the laws of that state, which is constitutionally is determined by the legislature of each state when it concerns presidential elections, for example. All of a sudden, those laws can now be enforced, and a lot of voter fraud goes out. And I think this decision is coming. I think it's coming sooner rather than later, and I think it will impact the 2026 elections. So prediction market people plan accordingly.
Robert, let me bring it up because I don't think I heard it.
I guess I'm thinking of it, of the fact that
I got to just pause. She sounds like AOC with a little more vocal fry, but okay, let's let this go.
remedial action, absent discriminatory intent, is really not a new idea in the civil rights laws. And my kind of paradigmatic example of this is something like the ADA. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the
It just gets
backdrop
worse.
of a
It doesn't
world
get
that was generally not accessible
paradigmatic.
to people with disabilities.
She said,
And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant. Congress said the facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible. I guess I don't understand why that's not what's happening here.
I got to hear the
idea
answer.
in Section 2 is that we are responding to current day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system, right? They're disabled. In fact, we use the word disabled in Milligan.
They're
We say
disabled.
that's a way
Black
in
people are
which
disabled,
we see
according to Justice Jackson.
Robert, it is such an amazing way to intellectualize verbal diarrhea. Like, it's an amazing thing if you could just say it with a different inflection.
Well, so you get the contempt, because what Justice Jackson represents is the quid pro quo that was taken in the 1980s between, by the way, the old corrupt country club Republicans and the black professional managerial class to betray the working class, both white and black. That what happens if you really do integration? This is what Martin Luther King was figured out very fast. You do integration, all of a sudden the black doctor, the black professional, the black lawyer, the black mechanic, the black businessman no longer needs to service the black community, can now service the white community. What did a whole bunch of them start to do? They started to abandon the black community. All of a sudden, these stable working class neighborhoods started to collapse into crime and chaos because the glue of a lot of their community was disappearing into the white suburbs they got to live in now. The way I used to put it is, what happens if you give Nat Turner a scholarship to Harvard? For those that don't know, Nat Turner led one of the great slave rebellions in the history of America. He ain't going to lead no slave rebellion, is he? So that what you do is you buy off the smart, the best, and the brightest, if you will. Now, you didn't have, what happened over time is something a little different. It became purely class privilege. That's how you have justices like Jackson, who do not represent the best and the brightest in the black community, period. I've been in front of a lot of highly skilled, very capable, very competent black jurists and black lawyers. They just don't get promoted and protected in the system because they're too connected to their roots. It was the giveaway with BLM. It was like, where are the black preachers? Where are the black businessmen? Well, the people I grew up with that I was like, why are they all gone? There's like none of them in here. I just see gangbangers and a bunch of professional class lefty losers. And that's because BLM was an astroturf movement meant to divide the community, not meant to unify the community. Enabled by big tech and the big donors like Soros, et cetera. So they could go buy 8 houses and, bang their 3 lesbian wives. That's the truth of it. And she represents that corruption. She's somebody who knows she wouldn't be where she was at, but for this quid pro quo, this deal that was reached. Instead, it would have been a Clarence Thomas, capable, competent, skilled, independent black intellectual rooted in the black community, unlike her, who isn't. And so unlike Obama, who isn't, unlike Kamala Harris, who isn't. That's all these black leaders who are extraordinarily have very little tie and connection to the actual black community. So that's what this deal was done. And it was done to screw over the populist Democrat at the time that represented both working class groups and had to continually deliver for them or they would get thrown out. And so people like me back in the 1990s were screaming about it then, but it was to deaf ears. But now what would happen is now it's Republicans who represent the working class in the South. And consequently, they are the biggest political partisan beneficiaries of this. But what it really is the ideological strain of populism is the big beneficiary out of this, because that's the history of who benefits from biracial working class coalitions in the South and across the country. So and this will empower working class black voters by giving them back their political capital that was stripped from them by these fake majority minority districts. And I say fake because it promoted the professional managerial class who didn't care about them, but was controlled by the donor class to sabotage their own economic interests. Indeed, it was in their interest that the black community remain suppressed because that's how they got their votes. If you want to make sure certain benefits keep happening, if you want to see certain symbolic wave the bloody flag BLM style things happening, then you got to keep voting for me. And that means I've got to keep you poor. I've got to keep your community divided. I've got to keep your schools to be crap. I've got to keep your church leaders and business leaders suppressed. And that's what they did. Only get rid of these barriers, these couriers to power in the clown world of the Democratic Party that it currently is, and you will unleash black entrepreneurialism, black intellectualism, black academic skill and strength rooted in a very conservative traditional values community. There ain't a whole lot of difference between the ordinary working class white guy in the South and the ordinary working class black person in the South, just like there ain't a whole lot of difference between rural middle America and rural Russia, as the Russians with attitude explained. They ain't commies, they're good Christian boys. They love the same thing middle America loves. They want guns and trucks, and the only difference is instead of saving herons like Viva or having a pet dog in the back, their pet is a bear. It's a little bit different. But otherwise, this is a revolutionary ruling that can not only drastically change the fate of Congress, but really the fate of these communities and their political empowerment going forward. And on top of it, get rid of voter fraud through real identity laws, because the VRA Section 2 has been the key to suppressing voter fraud changes and reforms now for decades.
But we've always said the argument that blacks somehow are incapable of getting identification is the most racist, insulting thing you can say.
Like calling him disabled, like she just did.
Well, I mean, I was going to say.
She holds contempt for the ordinary working class black person. That's the reality of who she is. She represents the W.E.B. Du Bois tradition, which was snobbish towards its own black working class. That's who and what they are all about.
It would be fantastic if she says in her ruling, yeah, I'm on the side of the other side. I realize how stupid my questions were and shame on me, but probably not going to happen. All right, so the other ones that are currently before SCOTUS, there was one that I know that we talked about a while back, which was...
We've got a quintet plus one that's not before SCOTUS that should be.
The one before SCOTUS, at least one of them, is the unreasonable search and seizure when a disgruntled ex calls in and says, my husband is suicidal. Cops show up. This is one of them, right? I'm not getting confused.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And people like, Barnes, what does that have to do with red flag laws? Read the decision. The decision is about green lighting red flag laws, so they can raid your house without probable cause of any crime or without any exigent emergent circumstances even being present.
So the probable cause threshold was the sticking point before the court, where they say this is not someone who's showing up to arrest someone. It's a community service call. It's like, oh, we think there's a problem here. Cops show up, for those who don't remember the case. They look through the window. They see what appears to be an empty gun holster and a notepad, from which they presume, I guess, he was writing a suicide note. Like it's so wild. It's like the orgy of evidence that we saw in Minority Report. So they see that. So I don't know why it took 45 minutes, but for 45 minutes they're scoping around, and then they see the guy who appears to have a gun in his waist pocket, and then they shoot him in the abdomen. Now he doesn't die.
Just listen to that. In order to stop you from shooting yourself, we're going to shoot you. Welcome to genius police work in America.
And so the question is, what is the threshold for the requirements to enter, basically? Because they weren't there to arrest. They didn't need probable cause. They were there on a wellness check. And so the threshold shouldn't be probable cause, because then you'll impede cops from doing their job.
So he presented no imminent risk of threat to them, and they shot him.
I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny, because the whole thing about this is they went to try to prevent somebody from killing themselves, apparently, then shoot them. In
order to kill yourself, we're going to shoot you first. We're going to kill you first. Woo!
And then the bottom line was, whatever the exigent community wellness check was, they're saying the threshold, if it's to be probable cause for these wellness checks, well, cops are going to be impeded from doing their job, which apparently in this case consists of shooting somebody who they thought was suicidal. Good for them. So where do you they have not issued the ruling, right? The oral
argument was disturbing. Mm-hmm. So used to be you had to have probable cause of a crime to go into a house. Then they started carving that up. Well, if exigent circumstances, emergency circumstances can justify you going into the house. Now, in this case, they didn't say there were exigent or emergency circumstances, nor did they just said it was reasonable to possibly prevent a threat of injury. The government can come in our house anytime they want now if this decision gets affirmed. And that is what our Supreme Court, including our so-called constitutional conservatives on the court, are considering doing, because so many of them skip past the Constitution and they see that back the blue, beautiful little government badge, and they just start bowing and bowing and bowing. And that's what we're witnessing here. It is a horrendous decision about to come down from the Supreme Court on this, it would appear.
No, it is amazing. Like there's get off my property is going to turn into, no, we have not even probable, reasonable suspicion, or we're concerned. We're going to enter now for your own good. And if you get shot,
a reasonable concern, we have a reasonable concern that something bad might happen if we don't come in and raid your house. And in this case, we might have to shoot you, just shoot you right out of the blue for your own good.
Robert, your birthday's April 11th, right? Your birthday's not today.
Yeah, no. April 11th.
Why does SB have a good birthday, Robert? Okay. First of all, do you want to know what's funny? This is why I use Comet now and no longer Google. Check this out. Robert Barnes, born April 11th, 1974, and it shows a picture of Alex Jones. Well, at least he's got me in there, Robert. That's wild. Okay, that's and it has Charlie Kirk in there and Tim Pool. Okay, so that was one of the SCOTUS ones. The other SCOTUS one,
the habeas one and the ex post facto, and then the prayer one.
Do the habeas one, because that one I'm less familiar with. The ex post facto I don't care about, but you'll tell me why I should care about it. But what's the habeas?
So the habeas is a guy was convicted, and he filed his first habeas. It was denied. After his first habeas was denied, the Supreme Court came in and said, you know what? That law that this guy was convicted under was unconstitutional how it was applied. So he's like, heck, why am I still in prison then? So he files a second habeas and nah, you can't do it.
It was already rejected under I think I remember this when we talked about this.
Into these successive habeas, they create all these ridiculous rules. So the question became, could the Supreme Court hear the case? And the government was effectively arguing the Supreme Court couldn't hear the case. This is so while people might think it's about the procedural technicalities of habeas, it's really about the meaning of the exceptions clause under the Constitution. And to be honest with you, I'm of conflicted opinion on the subject. Because I don't like the way they play games with locking people in prison for unconstitutional indictment convictions, but in terms of the individual case. On the other hand, I would be all for the Supreme Court determining that Congress could strip them of all power, because I am not sold that the judicial branch has held up its end of the constitutional bargain. since the beginning of our country. So the exceptions clause is this. Article 3 gives the Supreme Court appellate jurisdiction. They have limited or original jurisdiction in certain cases, but they've done a good job of eviscerating their own original jurisdiction because they're a bunch of Pontius Pilate cowards who don't want to handle cases like the election case of 2020. That was a perfect case for their original jurisdiction. The Supreme Court has appellate jurisdiction over any lower court ruling if the case arises under the Constitution or arises under the law of the United States. However, the same constitutional provision in Article 3 says that Congress can make exceptions to the appellate jurisdiction as they see fit. The question has long been, what does that mean? Could Congress take away the first part? Could Congress say, yes, you have jurisdiction in cases of the Constitution, but not anymore? We say no, right? That's always been the question. It's like, so the broad scholastic interpretation over a long period of time has been that this exceptions clause can't take away constitutional challenges and probably can't take away challenges that arise under federal law, except under unique sort of, they can do procedural protocols as to how you do things, but not substantive ones. Because otherwise, the exceptions clause swallows the first part of it. But from a policy perspective, I'd be all for the exceptions clause swallowing the rest of it, because these lazy bums have proven themselves incapable of keeping up their end of the constitutional bargain. And let's just say the Supreme Court, and get rid of all courts, all federal courts, get rid of all of them, and tell the Supreme Court, you get to handle dispute, but when the next time Macron's wife smacks him around on the plane, and they got to sue each other, they can go to the Supreme Court for original jurisdiction. That's one of the public consuls areas of original jurisdiction. But that's it, not for anything else. And so but I think probably the better constitutional argument is that the exceptions clause can't swallow the other part. Otherwise, it's kind of contradictory.
Over on CommuTube, 200 Watt Studio says, whoever sent that wellness check should have sent him DoorDash instead in retrospect. No, she might have, it was his ex. She might have done it specifically to get revenge on him, which she probably did. Okay, very interesting.
And that's the problem. It's a green light. What the decision they're about to issue is a green light for the worst version of red flag laws across the country.
Yeah, and swatting that it's vindictive swatting from ex-spouses and whatever. It's he's scared.
Another case where Alito was, acting like his old prosecutorial self was the ex post facto clause case.
Okay, so this one was
restitution
for criminal acts for those who are convicted of criminal, and then they can't decide if it's a civil remedy or a criminal remedy. But in this particular case, what makes it unique is that the restitution provision came into effect after the individual was convicted of their crime, and then it's sort of retroactive application. You can't have retroactive criminal law. What's the word for it? Right, Robert. It's ex post facto. Okay, sorry. You can't have ex post facto application of criminal law. You can have ex post facto application of taxes, civil stuff, but the fundamental rule is that you can't criminally penalize someone for that which wasn't a crime when they did it. In this case, they're questioning whether or not they can impose the criminal victim compensation on someone who committed the crime before the provision of law came into effect. I mean, at the risk of asking the stupid question, I didn't really care about the decision. Why is it important? No, not the argument.
Well, so it's really about what does the ex post facto clause mean in general. So the Constitution says Congress shall pass no ex post facto law. And but the way the courts have done that is they've decided to limit the definition of an ex post facto law. To most people, an ex post facto law is any law that attempts to change legal remedy or consequence for behavior that has already happened. Right? That's the point of ex post facto. But not according to our Supreme Court. Like, nah, that's only when it's criminal punishment. When it's civil, you can get away with all this stuff. So so that's why restitution became, is it civil or is it criminal? There's no dispute that the law was passed as a criminal statute. So what was it? So what was Alito doing? Alito was saying, well, private citizens can enforce it, so let's pretend it's civil, so that we can keep this incredible power of restitution for the government to steal your stuff. In the case of a criminal case, even though they were stealing your stuff for when you engaged in behavior that was not illegal at the time, right? That's what they're doing, in effect. And so, to me, it's clear it's criminal since it's in a criminal statute, applied in the criminal process, enforced by criminal means. Sounds kind of criminal to me. Since it's punishment, that used to be the standard. Not whether somebody could enforce a judgment against you, like Alito's lame claim. It used to be very simple. Is it punishment or is it deterrence or is it remedy? compensatory remedy. This is not designed as compensatory remedy. It is designed as punishment. So as such, and it's inflicted as such, it should be seen as such. But who knows? They may further eviscerate ex post facto law by telling everybody, hey, it's fine as long as you somehow call it remedial or you somehow allow individuals to enforce it. It magically is no longer a criminal law, and thus you can make up the law after the fact to steal people's money and property.
Yeah, and don't worry, you'll never go to jail for an unpaid civil fine. You'll go to jail for contempt for not paying it when they order you to. Bada bing, bada boom. Here, let me bring up a few more in locals, Robert. Pasha Moyer says, here is what I envisioned when you mentioned the grapes of wrath, Viva. We are the grapes of wrath. We never take a bath. It is our style to seldom smile and never laugh. We are the grapes. What is this, Pasha Moyer? It's a good rhyme. But I don't know what the reference is. Shofar says, wouldn't this be considered treason, Robert? Military tribunal. That was about, what's his face there? Bolton. Oh, here we go. Bender is great. Now back in stock. Want a flag like Viva and Barnes? I'll show you mine in a second. I have made a small batch of our waving wooden American flags and would like to offer a discount to the locals community. Well, I hope you're ready to offer it to everybody. Renixworkingmyshopify.com. Use the code LOCALS50 for $50 off. This is going to everybody, so I hope you can handle the bandwidth.
Those are beautiful.
They're amazing. They're amazing. Here, I'm going to share everybody the link. And this is a locals member. Support the work that he does. I hope you get too many orders to fulfill. I don't hope that, but you know what I'm getting at. Okay. Then we got Kimmy Hunt. Congressman Eugene Vindman, Alexander Vindman's twin, was the NSA person that cleared Bolton's book. Oh, shut up. That makes sense, actually. Eugene Vindman. That's wild. Okay. Kimmy Hunt. Thank you. Shatan Grok thinks China is the greatest country on earth. Ithaca 37 Cato. That was Tiffany Fong. If your boyfriend is at a No Kings rally, that's your girlfriend. Las Vegas Barnes reporting for duty says Chris Craft 2. Plant Nerd, I got that. Now we all went down to the bottom, so I'm going to go back up. In order to stop you from shooting yourself, we're going to shoot you. Welcome to a genius police work in America. Robert Barnes is a national treasure. And then we got, sorry, I looked up the wrong date. I'm sick. I blame Nike. Well, you also got Alex Jones's birthday on April 11th. Have a good birthday. Okay, yeah, we got that. Don't worry. All right, I'll get back to more of those afterwards. Robert, the other one was the religious prayer. This one was one that I found particularly interesting. Is that a 2050, it goes back 10 effing years is how quickly the wheels of justice turn in America. It was in Florida. I high school, whatever, I don't know what it was. It was a sporting event. One of the teams wanted to say a prayer before the sporting event, and the school or university, whatever it was, prohibited them from saying a prayer on the basis that it's a government, that it was government, and they're not imposing prayer or something along those lines. And they sued for First Amendment violations. And then the question became whether or not it was a government entity that was expressing the opinion, or if it was a government entity expressing a private opinion. The bottom line, they were not allowed to say a prayer before a sporting match and sued. Now the question is going to be whether or not it was wrongful suppression of their saying a prayer. It doesn't make any sense, because you say God bless America before everything and nobody bats an eye. Okay, flesh it out, because I might have done a terrible job summarizing that.
I mean, what the core of the case, no, that's exactly precisely the facts. And what the core of the constitutional issue is, this old decision, Le Monde, kind of like Don Le Monde, who's, I think he was advocating for Antifa arming or something in the guise of Second Amendment things. It was like one of his crazy latest looniest rants. But basically, they confused the obligation to protect religious expression with the establishment of a church. And liberal judges did this in order to try to purge religion and to openly and overtly discriminate against religion in the public square by saying any expression of religion in the public square is now the establishment of religion. When it's not the government issuing the prayer, it's private people, part of a Christian group, who wanted to use the government platform in the public square to communicate their personal beliefs, to petition the Lord for prayer. Now, the lead singer of The Doors didn't think that was possible, but you do as many drugs as he does, and that's how you get lost. You can indeed, Mr. Morrison, petition the Lord with prayer. And that's what they wanted to do before a contest. Tennessee needed to petition the Lord for prayer many times this past Saturday. And I wish they would have before getting their rears whipped by Alabama. So this Lemon case is constantly confused expression. In fact, I had this debate with William Kunstler at Yale as a student. And I was like, you keep confusing establishment of religion with expression of religion. I was like, permitting the public square to allow for the expression of religion is constitutionally protected because nobody confuses it with the government establishing a church. It's like, that's nonsense. The concern over the establishment of religion was, God bless them, was worried about the Catholics taking over or some of the Anglicans, and some others. But was an actual state church. That's what they were concerned with. They were not concerned with the expression of religion. Indeed, they knew we had a very religiously diverse country compared to many other countries in the world, precisely because we did not have a state church. And they wanted to keep it that way. But you keep it that way by protecting expression of religion. Using a state platform to express religious belief does not convert that into state expression of belief. And that's the mistake they're making. And I think the Supreme Court's going to fix it, not only to fix the right to pray in these public settings and to use the public platform to do so for personal purposes, but also across the board. This is a chance for them finally to say, Lemon was bad law, time to get rid of it. I think this will be one of the better decisions that comes out of the Supreme Court this term.
But now I try to view it from the other side. If it were any other religion, and I won't even use Islam as the comparable, but if it were like a Jewish prayer, would I be able to imagine people being uncomfortable or not appreciate?
Oh, we have Dearborn is the example of this right now. So everybody's complaining about the nuisance because Dearborn, which is basically mostly Islamic community in Dearborn, Michigan, where Rashid Tlaib is from, is blasting out more 6 a.m. morning, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. I mean, let's be honest. Most people hear Allah Akbar and they're like, where's the bomb? Where's the bomb? That's just being honest.
I happen to know it is only the Islamic Arabic expression for "oh my God," which is when everyone, where was it where something happened and everyone's like, "oh my God," he was screaming Allah Akbar. It's like it was someone screaming in shock at something. It was an event and people were accusing the guy of being a terrorist. I'm like, that just means "oh my God."
Yeah, it's just very common in their club.
But now I have to think about what the event was, because this was one of the cases where like the Reddits of the world got the wrong guy, because like he was saying Allah Akbar. It's like, that just means "oh my goodness." It didn't mean he's involved in it. But sitting on that side, but Robert, people are going to say
complaining about that in Dearborn.
Yeah, but
that's
people
the expression of religion, unless it becomes a nuisance, right? And that has nothing to do with their religious content of it. If somebody's screaming at you at 6 a.m., that's a nuisance, even if they're screaming, "Go Tennessee!" Doesn't matter what they're screaming. Like, come on, 6 a.m., dude, turn that speaker down. So I understand people, and then and there's an underlying concern that it's an attempt to Islamicize more and more of society. There in Dearborn, they've tried to impose various forms of Sharia law in certain instances. Female genital mutilation has become an issue there. So I understand where the concern is. I'm more protective of their rights, unless it's really if the content of them making the prayer it has nothing to do with it, then you have a legitimate objection. If you're objecting to the content of their prayer, then you can object in your personal rights, but that's protecting religious expression.
I'm just trying to think of an analogous situation where someone would say, yeah, it's not because they're saying a Muslim prayer before a game. If it's like, I don't know, the teams are based on countries of origins, nobody would say the government is making me believe this. They're saying it's the airwaves, and we're not endorsing or codifying the message, but we're allowing them to say a prayer before they get started. I mean, I can appreciate it. Okay.
So we'll see how it translates into that context. The other two cases is a case the Supreme Court now has to take, which is the National Guard case, and then the other is the Supreme Court case they should have taken but did not.
Which one was the one they should have taken?
The one and only Alexander.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, well we'll get that one afterwards. The National Guard, Robert. I mean, we're witnessing what is basically a judicial insurrection. And the irony is, the No Kings parade, the No Kings, whatever the fuck they want to call it, yesterday.
They're like Burger King, didn't they? Like Burger King hats walking around. Did you see the JD Vance meme? He did the meme on Blue Sky, on Commie Blue Sky. He put up Trump getting throned, pulling out the sword, and then he took the BLM people. Remember when all the Congress members, bowed for BLM? He had them bowing to King Trump. JD Vance's account is now the number one blocked account on Blue Sky.
Oh man, what's amazing is they have no sense of humor. They're like, I don't know why all the Republicans think this is an own. It just makes them look. the people who can't take the joke, I mean, that's what it's there for. And the flip side is this no kings. It's not about no kings. It's about no president. They want to have something of a system where the kings are the judges and the kings are the bureaucracy and the kings are the parliamentary powers. And they effectively strip the president of his executive powers. So the National Guard. Now, which states was it? It was California. Which other states have basically restrained Trump's ability to bring in the National Guard?
They tried in California, but the Ninth Circuit overturned it. They tried in Portland, Oregon, but even the Ninth Circuit overturned it. Now it's in Memphis, Tennessee. Ain't no court trying to block it. The place where they did block it is Chicago. The Commie District Court blocked it, and then the Seventh Circuit joined in thanks to one of the Trump idiot appointees, Eve or whatever her name is. She and Barrett were like peas in a pod on the Seventh Circuit. Always a disaster. She was somebody else they were trying to put on the Supreme Court. I was going nuts about. Luckily, with this decision, bye-bye. That didn't ever happen, sweetheart. You can thank God. That's the only upside to this decision is she's exposed her idiocy in ways that anybody can see, along with a Poppy Bush appointee and then an Obama appointee. And what they said is that the president of the United States cannot use the National Guard in Chicago, cannot use the Insurrection Act in Chicago. With some of the nuttiest decision language and logic I've ever seen. Yeah, that's Amy St. Eve. Yeah. I mean, any kind of weird name like that, you got to be skeptical, to be honest with you. But I've been in front of her. Not bright. No other way to put it. Just slow as slow goes. Here's what the law provides: that if there is simply the danger, if the president determines there is a danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government, or the president determines that the current law enforcement forces in place are unable with regular forces to simply execute the laws, then he can invoke the National Guard. That's about as broad as it gets. To give you the idea of the different presidents that have used this in some form or fashion, it goes back to George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, Eisenhower, Johnson, Kennedy, Bush. Almost everybody has done this at one time or another. Half the presidents have used it at one time or another. And now they're saying the president of the United States can't use it to allow ICE to protect themselves from not getting firebombed, from not getting shot at, from not. And what did they say about the protests? They said, these are simply sporadic and isolated violence. And then they went further. They said it must be deliberate violence. It must be organized violence.
Check.
It must be pervasive violence.
Check.
It must be persistent violence. It must be systemic violence. And it must be intended to overthrow the government of the United States, not just obstruct the laws and the rest. And it must be something that the military couldn't fix, even though the Posse Comitatus Act limits the military. But under the Insurrection Act, he could use that as well to do that. This was a separate section that he used. But this is just insanity by these judges who are gaslighting the world to protect Antifa's consistent assaults on ICE.
Well, basically what it does is it basically means that the president, the executive, could never deploy the National Guard unless it's specifically requested by the state governor.
Yeah, exactly. And he couldn't bring in the military even under the Insurrection Act, under the logic applied here. There are a bunch of people like, oh, don't worry, you can just do the Insurrection Act. Not the logic applies both ways here. The logic would also apply to the Insurrection Act. Even though they're supposed to defer more discretion to the president in the Insurrection Act, they're not affording him any. They're not affording. They said that none of the declarations of the federal government mattered. What mattered were what the protest group said. That was it. I mean, I was like, you got to be kidding me. It's just a joke of a decision based on false facts that the federal court, now 4 different federal judges, have signed on to gaslighting the world about, and is attempting to overturn the president's power. This is the federal judiciary. We have an insurrectionary judiciary, is what we have.
Well,
the leader of the insurrection is wearing black robes.
Yep. No, well, we've seen it from everything. Can't fire, can't direct payments, can't control the military, can't rein in crime, can't deport illegals, can't deport criminals. It's amazing. I feel like I've taken a very thorough black pill suppository over the last 2 years. I say even since Trump came back in, because you didn't realize how pervasive the problem was among those who actually control the levers of power at the lower levels, which makes it a little harder to get to. Okay, so that's the that was the insurrection one, and then we get to the one where they don't get involved, which is with Alex Jones. Now, I didn't want to not jump on it. I just didn't want to overreact catastrophically too early because I wasn't sure if there were any remaining remedies. Like I texted you privately. Not privately, I texted you. I said, "Is it possible they didn't want to get involved in the Connecticut decision because they're awaiting sort of final adjudication on the Texas outcome?" I'm just trying to think of some silver lining for why they didn't, what door might be left open. But like you told me, and you'll explain now, the Connecticut $1.4 billion judgment is res judica. There's nothing more that's happening now. That decision and that quantum and that procedure stands and has been ratified by the Supreme Court, tuck-tailing and running. I'm not blackpilled. That's the reality.
It's now final. Now, I wish his lawyers would have raised the constitutional colloquium argument. This was an ongoing debate I had with his lawyers throughout these are a different group of lawyers, not ones I dealt with at the beginning. But I thought they underappreciated that in order to get the Supreme Court's attention, you need to make this beyond Alex Jones, and you need to make it about a big constitutional discrete issue. And the colloquium requirement, for those that don't remember, it's the second part of the New York Times case. Everybody remembers the malice part. They forget this part. They said that you have to make a false statement about a specifically identifiable individual. And if it's not specifically, and if it's about a group, the group has to be so small that everybody knows it's about that individual. And they completely eviscerated that in the Alex Jones cases. They were overturning New York Times in those cases. And I wanted them to get focused that point. Instead, there tends to be a tendency of Supreme Court advocates to get super technical. And they think the best argument is some like you have to like read it for 33 times to figure out what the argument is. Supreme Court eyes glaze over when they see things like that. You got to make it simple. You got to make it straightforward. You got to make it sound as legal and as obvious as possible. So I thought I would have preferred they go a different path, but it is what it is. The bottom line is a decision that was a horrendous decision. And by the way, it is a reminder, learning lesson to young lawyers out there. You're often going to be told, water it down. Oh, to be polite, be diplomatic. Don't upset or offend anybody. Make it real technical. I have been told this from day one as a law student. They're all wrong. You go in and scream at him and say, you're a rotten SOB, da-da-da-da-da. You be as dramatic as possible. It was the way they described me in the Wesley Snipes case. He said, most lawyers come in, Barnes comes in, and the grenades start going off in 5 seconds. That's the only way to get their attention. Otherwise, you just can't get their attention. They're a bunch of corrupt, lazy hacks who love to go to their little cocktail parties in the Hamptons when they're not vacationing in Europe with their corrupt buddies, like Justice Roberts and Norm Eisen like to do, along with others over there in France. God knows what they're doing over there. Just draw your own conclusions. But you need to smack them in the face to get their attention. It's just a reality. And is it risky? Yeah, but otherwise you've got no shot. So you go from 0 to 5%. Yeah, still 5%. It's better than 0. So that's just word of wise for people out there. However, that cannot excuse the inexcusable actions by these rogue courts that have allowed one of the most wayward cases of rogue lawfare in violation and evisceration of every First and Fifth Amendment freedom we have, which is enforced through the 14th Amendment against the state of Connecticut. Because what Connecticut did here was they denied Alex Jones, based on his out-of-court speech, the right to even bring a motion to dismiss. Then they said, hey, we want you to produce evidence that Jones explained he doesn't have. He doesn't have because the theory of the case was always garbage.
Well, they were asking, people don't remember, and you were on Alex Jones after I was on Thursday, I think, but they're asking for a detailed breakdown of the profits that you made from reporting on the Sandy Hook stories, as if anybody has that. Then they were asking for
lost money by talking about Sandy Hook. No, yet, a couple of things. One, 99.9% of everything Alex Jones or InfoWars published, printed, or broadcast about Sandy Hook said Sandy Hook happened. The number one complaint Jones had was you can go back and watch in live time on the night of Sandy Hook what Jones said. He said they're going to blame the gun, and then they'll go out of their way to suppress evidence about SSRI problems, about the psychological treatment of young men, about the lack of security at schools, about the celebration of public violence by the media in these mass shootings, about the celebration of this kind of violence in the gaming and Hollywood culture. He goes, they're going to suppress all of that because they're manipulating these young kids to do these horrible things, and they're going to instead blame the inanimate object. And that's what he said. And that put Jones on a target list. He was on a target list for many other reasons, too. What Jones has found out, and we'll get to this part in a second, what Jones found out since the case about who was orchestrating and organizing.
Well, we know that
funding this case.
We know that it was the FBI, which, you know, it also paid dividends to the FBI guy who got $90 million for, despite not being named and despite, you know, not having any family members there that day, $90 million in this Connecticut decision. I cut you off. Sorry, that's where you were going.
No, exactly. So what happened in the court level, or those that don't understand, Jones was sued on novel legal theories that on their very face violated his First Amendment rights. His right of speech, his right of expression, his right of assembly, his right of association, and most importantly, his right of free press. It also violated the way in which they handled the case, violated his due process rights independent of that. So the lawsuit itself violated his rights. They had ridiculous theories. They brought the case in state court, even though it belonged in federal court, because Jones is not a Connecticut resident. But the federal court was too scared to handle it, so kept kicking it back to state court, even though everybody knew it was completely fraudulent, the manner in which they got control in the civil court. What does that make it? It makes it a violation of his civil rights, including violations by the Connecticut judge. The Connecticut judge was complicit in the civil and criminal violations of Alex Jones's rights. And an honest DOJ would have that state court judge under criminal investigation, as well as her husband, who has political and financial ties to this, as well as a United States senator who has ties to this, as well as a prominent personal injury law firm that prosecuted the case that is deeply embedded within the Democratic Party political machine. And you tie it back further, you find CIA bad faith actors, FBI bad faith actors, DOJ bad faith actors implicated at various points, including tracking and tracing the money and other organized efforts Jones was put on a bunch of secret surveillance lists, secret lists to limit his ability to fly under certain circumstances, a whole bunch of things. He was the target of the Obama administration that continued under the Biden administration. So these cases, bogus on their face, violate his rights on their face, but he's denied to point that out because the court said, you've criticized these lawyers outside of court, so I'm going to deny you the right to bring your motion to dismiss any of the claims. Then subjected him to fake discovery. The claim of all these people and the broad claim against them in the court of public opinion has been Alex Jones got rich, popularizing the idea Sandy Hook never happened. Problem one, 99.9% of what Alex Jones and InfoWars published, printed, and broadcast said Sandy Hook happened. So, oops, their whole theory is wrong from the get-go. Second, he made no money off of it. They knew he made no money off of it from a whole bunch of their tracking. So what did they do? How do they get their fake case through? They pretend he has evidence that they know he doesn't have of his guilt. Can you imagine? I demand you give me evidence of your guilt, but I'm innocent. Judge, he won't give me evidence of his guilt. Declare him guilty. And that's what they did. Because he asserted his innocence, they declared him guilty. That's how insane this was. Complete evisceration of every constitutional right of due process under law. And so they were violating his First Amendment rights, but the best way to get that was to violate his Fifth Amendment rights through the 14th Amendment and force through it. So then they held a literal show trial in both of these cases. Literal show trial, broadcast TV. Remember all these courts that don't like a whole bunch of cases to be broadcast? They couldn't wait for these cases to be broadcast, in which Jones was not allowed to defend himself on the merits at all. Instead, they had an FBI guy who had nothing to do with anybody who died at Sandy Hook, who they got the Connecticut court awarded over $100 million to. It is the most insane verdict in the history of defamation law.
And just to clarify, this is all out of Connecticut. This is not yet out of Texas.
Yeah, it's not even out of lunatic Texas.
They did something similar in Texas. It was just sort of like dialed down a little bit.
Well, they dialed another part up. They dialed one part down, the other part up.
But
the HBO film crew that literally the judge walked the red carpet on. That's how nuts they were. That's how corrupt these judges are. Systematically violating Alex Jones's civil rights. So he takes up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and being the bunch of lazy political cowards they are born to be, they refuse to take the case, which means there's no other remedy through that part of the process. There might be remedy in the bankruptcy court, maybe not. Now, the Justice Department could have made a stand and stepped up. Ed Martin was investigating this. Ed Martin was finding evidence. He's the one President Trump has trust with to investigate all weaponization of the legal system in wrongful ways that violated civil rights, as clearly happened to Alex Jones.
And
was finding evidence of who it was tied to. That, certain former mayor, billionaire, big media man, Bloomberg tied to it. Certain Bill Gates tied to it. A bunch of high-profile, big money actors, Jeff Bezos, tied to it. So it implicated some of the most rogue actors in the deep state. For him, I mean, this week they published the number 1 and number 3 channels on Rumble. And I won't mention the number 2 channel because that dude's a loser and he chases little people around and animals and other things. But number 1 and number 3 were both Alex Jones on Rumble. Most watch, listen to views. That Alex Jones is, you can go to YouGov. Look, if you don't believe me, go to you. Like you can see, they put that photo of my birthday of Alex Jones because they think that's a negative. That ain't negative. I'm proud and honored to stand with Alex Jones. I'm proud of the fact I'm friends with Alex Jones. Alex Jones is a great American. And guess who agrees with me? Try more than 30 million Americans who have a very favorable view of him. Try more people than voted in the Democratic presidential primaries. Try if you look at any scope, when they covered this case just this week about Alex Jones, it was covered by literally every news station in every news in the world. Every country in the world had some news station covering the Alex Jones case.
Robert?
Alex Jones is the most impactful individual commentator in America today, especially if you care about truth and populist values.
Now, I know the answer to the question, Robert, but who whitewashed the that's a joke on his last name. Who stuck the spokes in the wheels of Ed Martin?
You mean who blanched it out?
There you go. For those who don't know, blanche in French is white. So the whitewash. It was a terrible pun. But yeah.
Leaves the white out. So on the eve of the Justice Department joining Alex Jones's submission, which would have got the Supreme Court's attention, and on the eve of Ed Martin furthering an investigation into the systematic and systemic violation of Alex Jones's case and his civil rights, Todd Blanche intervened again. Todd Blanche, remember, is the man who is proud of the Epstein cover-up. He orchestrated and organized the Epstein cover-up. He's still whining to a bunch of people that shows up in the New York Times, his whining about why didn't everybody else join his cover-up publicly by retweeting him. It's probably because Dan Bongino knows you're full of it, Toddy boy. The Todd Blanche Trump thinks of him as Roy Cohn. He's Roy Cohn without balls or brains. That's what he is. He deliberately intervened. And you know what part of the published excuse was that I've seen in various press that he supposedly said to Ed Martin, or was alleged to have said to Ed Martin? He said, why would we do this on behalf of some fringe figure? Imagine thinking Alex Jones. That's like that AI nonsense that thinks I'd be embarrassed by being photographed with Alex Jones when that's one of my proudest photos.
It's like Todd Blanche doesn't know that Alex arguably, but not arguably, got Trump elected in 2016. Fringe.
Yeah, exactly. That's how clueless he is. If it's not in the New York Times, Todd Blanche doesn't know it exists. This is how you get the president and the vice president saying a bunch of really stupid stuff about Ukraine, because they listen to the versions of Todd Blanche that are in the Pentagon or in the State Department or the Defense Department. And my open advice to them is, please, for the love of God, the great skill of J.D. Vance is that he constantly reaches out to independent sources. He needs to keep doing that. God bless the president. Thank God for Viktor Orban, because Trump keeps getting his news from Fox and CNN. Vance has the great skill to get around it, but he's going to have to keep using that skill, because otherwise he will get misled by the Todd Blanches of the world on cases like this. This is an utter embarrassment. They have no idea how many people they enraged by not doing something about this case, by not even trying to do something about this case. Ed Martin gets it because Ed Martin comes from the grassroots of MAGA. Todd Blanche has been a lifelong liberal Democrat, registered as such in New York City. His dream job was to work for the Sovereign District of New York, one of the most corrupt districts in the country. At the same district, you know who the kind of people he was working with there? the James Comeys of the world, who also tutored at the Sovereign District of New York.
I was going to say the Jeffrey Epsteins of the world, but that might have been a step too far.
Maybe not. So he parlayed that into a big white shoe corporate law firm. Trump gets into a bunch of legal trouble, and he suddenly discovers maybe he's MAGA after all. Can you keep writing me those 7-figure checks, Mr. President? I want to be from MAGA now. And people act like, oh, the sincere, bold stand. Hogwash. Where was he on any other case? Did he appear for any of the January 6 cases? Because I sure don't remember any of them. Did he appear in any of the civil rights cases? Because I sure don't remember any of them. Did he appear in any of the election cases? Because I sure don't remember any of them. So Mike Davis, keep spinning and brown-nosing all you want. The BS ain't flying anymore, bro. So the Todd Blanche will constantly and consistently and continuously be an interference with the ability of the Justice Department to get its job done. So he should find what little ambassadorship he wants someplace, some little beach country he loves, ship him off and send him there. If that's what you want to reward his loyalty for. The the failure to address the horrific lawfare against Alex Jones that included inculpating the Justice Department itself is a complete condemnation of the fraud and fake and phony MAGA that is Todd Blanche.
Well, let me bring it up here. Why is Robert blaming Todd Blanche for all the legal chicanery and absolving Donald Trump when Trump is who put Blanche where he is? So Todd Blanche has the power to do what he's done. Okay, we can always. Trump doesn't make the best picks all the time.
Trump looks for loyalty like he looks for leverage and love, and sometimes in all the wrong places in terms of politics. And I think that he's looking for a loyalist. He thinks Todd Blanche is a loyalist, and he makes the mistake of hiring white shoe guys. And he should have learned. I mean, I don't remember anything spectacular about Todd Blanche defending Trump at all during any of those cases. Do you?
No, and I was just looking it up. People can probably see when I open up another window, my glare changes. I was trying to see what he did in Jan 6, and no, other than representing Trump on a few motions no, nothing. But the bottom line,
right? He got a big fat check and then weaseled his way into the Justice Department, and he's trying to become the Attorney General, by the way. If Pam Bondi wants to know who leaks the most negative information about her, she should look to her number 2.
Very interesting. Oh, by the way, Bender is great. The cutting boards. Community's amazing. Sold out in one afternoon. I might need to step up production. Thanks again. I'll be back soon. Why isn't President Trump exonerating those rogue judges and directing AG Bondi to hold congressional hearings? Jefferson wrote, the question whether the judges are invested with exclusive authority to decide on the constitutionality of law has been heretofore a subject of consideration with me in the exercise of official duties. Certainly there is not a word in the Constitution which has given that power to them more than to the executive or legislative branches. From Roostang.
Absolutely. It was the old Marbury versus Madison. But the other case the Supreme Court better take up, though Amy Coney Barrett failed to issue an immediate stay like she should have, probably because she saw her friend St. Eve was on the panel, is my strong suspicion, is the National Guard in Chicago. And so we'll see. Hopefully they take that up, because you look at the plain language of the law, it fits what President Trump has the power and right to do and is the history to do so. But no greater embarrassment than the Supreme Court not taking the Alex Jones case, and no greater scandal in the Justice Department, other than the Epstein case, that than the Alex Jones mishandling of the case by Todd Blanche.
Robert, if you can't see this, it says Nick Fuentes is greater than Robert Barnes. That has to be a joke. It has to be a joke. We've seen Life of Brian.
All the Fuentes fans always love to flood in. The furry fan. All I can say is Israel and Mossad loves the fact that Nick Fuentes is popular in America. That's all that's how I'll put it.
Let me bring this up here, get to a few more, and then we're going to get on to the next subject. But I'm falling far behind with this. Okay, have a good birthday. If Donald John Trump doesn't normalize relations with Russia, I'm going to be very angry with him and dump the dictator, says Mick Futz. Trump is too gosh darn flaky. That's his biggest problem right now. Plant Nerd, I got that one. Las Vegas reporting. I think I got. Okay, so I did get all these. We can go back down to the bottom. Robert, what do we have left?
So we have Dr. Bowden, the indictment of Antifa, Pentagon's media rules, JFK Russia files, the Washington loss on the First Amendment, and the Texas takeover.
Let's.
And the Charlie Kirk visas was something that people ask to talk about too.
Oh yeah, well, okay. So let's. Well, what do we start with? Let's start with Robert Pickett. Oh, Bowden, Dr. Bowden. Okay, so but Bowden was the one who got disciplined for prescribing ivermectin and the other no-nos during COVID. What recently has happened to her?
So the Texas Medical Board this past week, while locking out the lawyers who were supposed to be allowed into the presentation, made their determination issue a public reprimand. What was this public reprimand based on? That Dr. Bowden, following the directions and advice of her and the desires of her patient, a man who is in critical condition from COVID-19 complications, wanting and needing ivermectin, that in reviewing the situation determined that was appropriate for him, that it was on the cusp of death, wanted to give it to him. So who was stopping it then, you might say? Patient wants it, doctor wants it. Well, why isn't they getting it? Because of the corruption of our hospitals. And they are protected. The big corruption at big hospitals and the corruption at big pharma is covered and protected by the state government medical boards, even in these conservative states. Because nothing gets Governor Abbott quickly moving in his wheelchair than a big pile of cash. He sees that cash. He's like, woo, I got to get going. Woo, I'm going to win the race today. The political handicap race. So he's put a whole bunch of people on there that have no business on there, that love foreigners coming in and flooding our medical system, including providing medical care. Good luck with that Pakistani doctor the next time you're at the table. You know what I mean? There's nobody who goes. I always tell people, you wouldn't hire a doctor in the local, low budget strip mall. Probably don't hire your lawyer there either. Just saying. Donald Trump could take that advice down there. But that doesn't mean you go to the white shoe firms either. So this person is in severe medical condition, needs ivermectin, wants ivermectin. His wife has to sue though to get it. So sues in court saying the hospital won't allow him to get ivermectin. Instead, what do you think the hospital is trying to give him? Remdesivir.
I was just looking up, who was it that I was looking up for the pharmacies that prevented outlawed pharmacies from issuing prescriptions. And it's all of the licensing bodies that do this, the AMA, yes, the AAPHA. And so, and remdesivir causes kidney failure. It causes organ failure. It causes a death in something like 20% of the people they administer to.
If you can go back when I was working, did a little show during COVID for Alex Jones, I predicted that they would pitch and push remdesivir before anybody else. Mm-hmm. Why? Because Anthony Fauci's pals were going to make huge money on it. And I saw who it was connected to at Duke, how it was connected at Fauci, who was going to get rich. And I said, watch, they're going to say remdesivir is the only good use. And here's the key to all the bad health protocol. The second thing, guess what they did? Ventilate them. Ventilate, which we now know the ventilation increased your risk of death, didn't reduce it. Now, you can't ask AI that because AI suppresses all of that information. I even asked them, I was like, give me the alternative perspective, the Children's Health Defense perspective. Guess what they told me? They lectured me on how Children's Health Defense is evil. AI, honest, independent AI, right? This tells you what crap AI is. It's propaganda times 10. People who watch and use AI, they actually literally get dumber. This has been studied over the last.
Rogan was talking about it with whatever doctor it was, and it's talking about the use it or lose it genes of intellect and your brain. Whereas if you don't use them like muscles, they will atrophy and they will not produce again. And it is absolutely amazing.
It's creating idiocracy. It's creating idiocracy. Mm-hmm. You have to rewatch that movie for one of our Saturday movie nights. So Dr. Bowden's just trying to save his life, do it and honor his wishes, and follow good medical practice. Ivermectin, one of the most successful drugs, miracle drug, known to man, saved hundreds of millions of people's lives over 100 years. This is now belatedly acknowledged by detailed studies, but not the official narrative. So the wife goes to court, sues, gets the judge to issue an order because how is a hospital stopping a patient from getting a prescription that has been prescribed by the patient's doctor? How the heck is that happening? The way it's happening is credentials. They love their credentials. Credentials are like licensures on steroids for abusing power. And so they said, oh, you're not credentialed at this particular hospital, so we've got to murder your patient instead, if you don't mind. And so she goes to court, and a judge says, this is kind of seems insane, grants an injunction to require them to credential her so she can do it. That's what she's operating under when she's trying to get the ivermectin to him. Later on, an appellate court will reverse that. He ends up dying because he doesn't get the medical care that he needed from the hospital, because I think the hospital helped murder him, in my opinion. So what does the Texas Medical Board do about this? Suddenly, how are they even involved? The patient isn't complaining. The doctor isn't complaining. It's not clear anybody is complaining. But Dr. Bowden started to become one of the most outspoken critics of COVID policy and protocol, and of the misuse and abuse of power by hospitals and the medical establishment in the COVID context. She is literally going around saving thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. One of the great lifesaver of our medical profession in the last half century. And what does she get for this extraordinary effort?
There was a doctor there was an investigator up in Canada, Dr. Helen Grews, who was investigating sudden infant death syndromes post-COVID jab, and went and investigated, just asked the questions as to whether or not there was contemporaneous proximity to the jab and the SIDS. And they didn't like her asking those questions, and they sanctioned her, reprimanded her. I think they fired her, and I think it was upheld by the courts.
Exactly. That's what the nature of this was. So the Texas Medical Board, which is out to protect corrupt medical institutions in the state of Texas, and to be an enforcer of a speech code on doctors using licensure disciplinary power as their pretext and their fig leaf. Now, they had big problems. She did nothing wrong. No competent, capable expert would say she did anything wrong. The patient was thrilled that she tried to help at all. So who's going to complain? They couldn't show that she did anything wrong. That no negative consequence at all came from what she was trying to do. It came from what the hospital was trying to do. So how in the world do they have authority to investigate at all? How does this case even become a case? And so just out of the blue, they developed this case. She has to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars defending herself. And then they go through this bogus routine where they mostly lie and misrepresent the facts and lie and misrepresent the history. Do you imagine this Texas Medical Board person saying, oh, no, our Stasi investigator fully approved of these bogus statement of facts. Mm-hmm. So this Orwellian order must stand, and think that's something to defend on, something to stand on. That's how nuts some of these guys were. So I don't know whether they're going to conduct another hearing or not, because this hearing violated her due process rights. I wasn't able to get in. We were told we were going to be able to get in. None of the lawyers were able to get in. But what's coming one way or the other is not only appellate and court challenges to this medical board action, but is going to be constitutional challenges to the rogue misuse and abuse of power by these medical licensure boards in the First Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and is applied to the 14th Amendment context. This case, various people have helped provide some financial support for it, so that 1776 Law Center is going to be taking on Dr. Bowden's case and assisting in both the civil rights aspect and any further court review and judicial review of this rogue action, and looking at broader legislative reforms and remedies. Because right along with Brooke Jackson, Dr. Bowden is one of the heroes of the disastrous time period of COVID in America.
I'm just going to do this. I'm going to give everyone the P.O. box if they want to send anything. I was going to bring up something which was the reason why I was doing that. Bringing up, the backdrop. Yes, I was going to bring up some more tip questions over on Viva Barnes Law. .locals.com. Chasseron says, Viva, respectfully, Viva, I appreciate you cannot read all the rants Locals paper comments. For the third week in a row, I want to ask something, Robert, and you read the preface and skip the part that is my question. He has me blocked on X, so this is my only place I can ask him questions. Am I not asking the right way? Let me know, and if I should bother. Well, okay. I'll go up and look. Block Grok, and your X feed will improve dramatically. Interesting. We've got Andrew Piscadlo, another assassination attempt. Catching a tree stand is not a success. This is a gross failure. Get Bongino out of the deputy.
What he's referencing is they found a stand right across from where the president lands at Palm Beach Airport. And it was in a place, it was a hunter stand that's in a place where there's nothing because of FAA, because of the proximity of the airport. They're not allowed to have hunting in there. So somebody was setting up a sniper's nest to take another shot at the president.
I'm trying to find Francis Chasseron. Trump is great. Okay, so it's not that one, Francis. The problem is if you put in multiple ones, Grok things China's the greatest show. Okay.
Yeah, we read that one.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna go see where Bender is great. All right, I'll find it. Ooh, did I miss this one? Is there any possibility that that we read that one? F. Chatron. Okay, is this about how about Canada declares we own everything indigenous? Okay, every penny we get goes. I read that one. Going up, Satoshi Ape, DTQC. I didn't see anything.
Yeah, we read them all.
Well, let me go to let me go over to Rumble. We're gonna take the party.
That's probably why he's blocked on X. He gets stuff wrong. Keep trying, Shatron.
Let me hear.
I'm a little skeptical of your last name. Sounds a little Frenchy to me, but that's okay. I'll give you a second shot.
Please make Alex Jones rant stand. I will do that. Decimal Threat says the statements made by Alex are nowhere near as close to the egregious as to what MSM doesn't say. Randy Edwards says, trying to understand why everyone is so angry at my family. We Kings trace our ancestry to John Quincy Adams and Meriwether Lewis. First Amendment is a limit on Congress. It is not a limit on states. 50 of the 50
it is.
States.
The 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. A little thing called the Civil War resolved that, my friend.
It says 50 of the 50 states declare their rights come from Christian God, doing so nearly 200 times combined. Super Buff Shaft. I remember that name. The 2021 Arizona forensic audit Jovan Pulitzer Cyber Ninjas did as the biggest, best case to take to the Supreme Court. It should lead many in both parties into jail. Talk to Johan and get it started. I'm going to screenshot this. Never put salt in your eyes. Never put salt in your eyes. Put salt in your eyes. Anyone who watches Kids in the Hall will get that one. And M. Sidloy says, people are so freaking. I ran into an acquaintance on Shabbat. Her second COVID jab gave her severe pain followed by permanent blindness. Naturally, she still had her third. And Sidloy, I know you're in Montreal. You're in Canada. I don't know if you're in Montreal, but I know you're in Canada based on that. Okay, let's take the party over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. But finish. Robert, why is it
an attempted conspiracy to take over an entire Texas county that happens to be very oil rich? We've got Washington getting knocked down on its First Amendment violations. We've got an Antifa indictment. What is all this stuff about Pentagon press rules? Charlie Kirk's visa controversy. And I think that's it. Oh, and the JFK Russia files.
What we're going to do, I was going to say one thing first. Hold on. What was I going to say? Forget it. We're going over to locals. I'm going to give everybody the link. We're going to see who we raid. Here's the link for everybody. Come on over to vivabarneslaw.locals. Robert, what do you have on this week?
So on Monday, we'll be live with Richard Barris on What Are the Odds? We will review what are your best options for the upcoming elections in Bolivia, Netherlands, Argentina, New Jersey, Virginia, and New York City. Looking at the prediction markets and a few other inquiries. We'll have a Barnes brief on Monday. Then we'll have a open discussion and debate. Well, Barnes briefs on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Open discussion on different topics, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, where the whole board contributes and we really get crowdsourced accurate intel and information. And then Bourbons, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then next week, we will not have a show on Sunday. We will have it on Monday. And also a special edition show on Monday. The one and only Brent Johnson of the dollar milkshake theory can explain what the heck's going on in China, Argentina, Colombia, all these other countries. What's going to happen? Is our financial system going to collapse? Are we going to surge? What does all this mean? Well, he's one of the top independent experts in the world. And he'll be live on Sidebar. We were going to do that this week, but Viva was like, oh, I'm busy traveling.
Yeah, I got to go to Switzerland, Robert. I'm going to Lugano.
Lugano, maybe Zurich. I go to the
the thing is, it's not that I know, like everyone loves staying home and being with their family. I've never been to
you
Switzerland.
More than most. Yeah, a lot of people be like, hey, I get to go to Lugano, Switzerland. You're like, dadgummit, I got to go to Lugano, Switzerland.
Look, it's going to be amazing. I'm going with Rumble, so the entire week schedule is going to be off, and I come back on Sunday, so it's going to be tough. Here, Robert, Grok thinks China is the greatest country on earth. Winston, the China show, almost lost his mind arguing with Grok.
Oh, yeah, that was great. That was great.
Speaking of Winston.
You sound very impressive.
Speaking of Winston. Oh, you little bastard. Oh, what do you say? That's right. You kissed my face. All right. So now we're going to go. Oh, so that's it. So my schedule is going to be off as of Tuesday. I'm going to try to pre-record something tomorrow and then maybe launch it Tuesday. It's going to be a red eye Tuesday night to Wednesday morning. Then there's something on Thursday. And then that's going to be plan B. I get to, am I allowed saying it? I'm interviewing the Prince of Serbia, among other interesting people. I'm going to host a discussion with Chris Pavlovsky and
is it Denmark or Norway or Finland? Which prince is it that's been accused of systematically raping half the women he met?
I have no idea.
I was like, man, he's like an honorary prince of England.
No King's Rally, Robert, and no Prince of England. All right, so anyways, it's going to be a good week, so stay tuned, but the whole week's going to be off. Okay, now I got a raid. That's right, we got a raid. Who is here? We're going to go raid the Mel K show. We're going to get in trouble if I do this? I don't know. Do I know who Mel K and Mike L is? The Tylenol piece. Yeah, we'll do it. I don't know who they are. If it's not, if you don't like it, I apologize.
I think I've been on Mel K's show before.
Yeah, I think I'm getting mixed up between. Wait a minute, hold on. Mel K. She's been on my. I know who she. Geez, I think she's the Village Crazy Lady. Isn't that her Twitter handle? So we know that's. What did I just do? Did I just go raid in the? No, so I obviously did not. It's /raid and then link. Okay, here we go. Confirm raid. You're all going to go over there. Come over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Viva Fry merch if you want to get some, and Louis the Lobster.
Can you imagine that the last chat was Roll Damn Tide? You sick SOB.
Oh, I didn't see that. Hold on, let me see here. I just hit raid. Oh, please make no. Okay, I didn't see that. Oh, in our locals community. Hold on. Down. I'll have to refresh. I think about it on there. Okay,
have you ever covered the great Alabama guy that used to say "Roll Damn Tide"? That went down and bragged about how he poisoned Toomer's Corner and named all his kids after Alabama thing, and he was completely funny and crazy at the same time.
Is the Las Vegas meetup planned? By the way, didn't answer the super chat question on YouTube.
Yes, so go to the locals page and you'll see that that a certain guest is in town in Vegas, and that you can meet him in person. And we're trying to get something arranged for either at or after that event.
Oh, here we go. Now I see the Roll Tide, baby. I don't even know what it means, but here we go. Viva. Oh, the China one, I got that one. And okay, Barnes, got to say it. Roll Tide, baby. Smoke them if you got them.
What is after the Alabama-Tennessee game, the winner smokes a cigar.
Okay. Now, what do we have left for the show things here? Well, what's the takeover of Texas? That one I know that I didn't get to.
Oh, that's that crazy guy that was trying to take over a whole county because it's oil rich. And he was at all these scams to take it over. And Paxton had to sue to try to stop him from taking over the county. Because the county has like 60 people in it. So he thought he could raid the county and make himself elected sheriff, mayor, king, all the rest.
Okay.
So it's just a crazy case. But we got Antifa indicted. We've got what's all this about the Pentagon media rule. We got JFK Russia files. Who did Russia finger as the criminal culprit from the get-go? With the Washington loses their effort to suppress religious rights, and the controversy over the Charlie Kirk visas.
Okay, so let's start with the controversy over Charlie Kirk visas. They want to revoke.
Are we still on Rumble, by the way?
I don't think we are. Oh, we are. I'm an idiot. We're updating people. Get over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. That includes you, CommieTube. I've been making out with my dog for the whole world. Why I'm so embarrassed. Make sure you subscribe before you leave. If you're not coming over, subscribe. Either way.
As Cartman would like to say, like, share, subscribe, because it helps him, because it makes you feel good.
Do it, people. And now we're updating, and hold on. I just got to go make sure that did we raid? Okay, so Viva raid. Booyah. There you go. All right, now I'm updating. I'm an idiot. I thought I did it already. Everyone, see you later. If you're not coming over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, that's where the party's at now.